Hey, welcome to the channel of Bird Dog Austria. My name is Fred Grössenbrunner. I'm from Austria. I'm the pilot of a Cessna Lima 19er Oscar 1 bird dog. This is my baby. It's a 1953 bird dog, an A model that flew for the United States Army. My dad flew the bird dog for more than 20 years in the Austrian Army, and he collected more than 5,500 hours. Luckily, he was my instructor. Thanks, Dad. I'm also a member and safety director of the International Bird Dog Association. Our mission is to keep the stories of the pilot that flew the bird dog in combat alive. This series here now is called Cessna Oscar 1 Lima 19er Bird Dog Legends over Vietnam. We want to keep your stories alive for the next generation. Thank you for your service. Gentlemen, this time I have the honor to present you Francis Doherty, the man who wrote the book Only the Light Moves. He flew for the Headhunters in Vietnam. Hey Francis, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Um, my name is Francis Doherty, and I wrote that book. Um, the title comes from a poem by a woman named Leonora Carrington, and the poem was written at the beginning of the 20th century. And when I read it, I realized that it directly applied to what we did in Vietnam. So her first line talks about going down into the silent garden. The silent garden is Laos. She talks about dawn being the time where nothing breathes, the hour of silence. It was, aside from animals, we were always hoping for the dead quiet. And then she says, everything is transfixed, only the light moves. Well, the name of the game for us was to get off before the sun came up, get into Laos so that we could use the sun to shine sideways into the leaves and we could see what we needed to see.
Ah,
That was the point of the title. A little obscure, but I kind of liked it. And I, uh, I went to Fort Rucker and Fort Stewart. I learned to fly there in the Army. I got out. I was very fortunate enough to get hired by an airline, and I spent the rest of my career flying big airplanes.
oh, that's insane. But was your dad flying or did you have
Yes,
any
yes,
family tradition?
yes, yes, yes. My father was a B-24 captain in World War II. He was stationed in India, skip bombing Japanese freighters in Rangoon Harbor. And if you think about that for a minute and visualize a B-24 in your head, that's like a shoebox with engines, and it has all the flight characteristics of a brick. And here these guys are skimming the water in Rangoon Harbor, skip bombing Japanese freighters in that monster, that beast. And then he said there were zeros all the time coming down out of the sun. He saw combat, uh, and so I had I had this to I knew about this when I was a little boy. When I was in the sixth grade, my dad picked me up from school, and he took me to Columbus, Ohio, with him in the back of a TWA Connie. My dad flew for Trans World Airlines after the war. Um, and so he came and got me at school, and he told me to leave my books in the car, which was very unusual for my father because you always had to do your homework. Always, always. So with the books stayed in the car, and I rode in the cockpit with him to Columbus, Ohio, and back. So the start of it was in the afternoon. We landed in the daylight at Columbus. Uh, and I remember the cows moving away from the end of the runway because there was a fence there, but they were out there. There was a pasture, and the airplane had come in, and the cows had all scattered. They could land. Then we flew back to New York, and I remember landing in the twilight, and you could see the lights of the Chrysler Building and the lights of the Empire State Building, and I was about 10 and a half years old, and I decided at that moment that that was it. Period.
Okay.
I would do anything that they asked me to do as far as going to college and whatnot. But this is where I was going to wind up. I wanted a pair of those Ray-Bans, and I wanted that uniform, and I wanted to be sitting in that seat. So that was that. And
that's a fantastic story.
it was, well, jump ahead just a very little bit. Um, when I when I was at the University of San Francisco, I dug myself an enormous academic hole that in my first 2 years at school, because I didn't go to school, I screwed around, drank beer, chased girls, and had a good time, and almost flunked out. Uh, the transformation came in my junior year when I became a genius because I started to study and actually applied myself. But I was never getting out of that hole. So I signed up for ROTC because I knew that the minute I graduated from college, the draft board was going to get me and I was going into the service. Figured I'd much rather be an officer. I'd much rather do what I wanted to do instead of what they wanted me to do. So I signed up for ROTC. When I came home, I had an army haircut at the end of my junior year. My father knew what I'd done, and he didn't say much till we got home, and then the interrogation began. And by the time I'd finished my explanation, I don't think I'd ever seen two people, my mother and father, as angry as they were with me for doing this. And my father stormed out of the room, swearing and cursing. And my mother, who'd never laid a hand on me, whacked me in the face. Just boom. And I thought, holy crap, she's really mad. We managed, but that was how my folks felt about what I had done. They had participated in World War II. My mother had brothers in World War II. They didn't want to see this for me, which is why they had me go to college, and here I was. So, but once I got there, they were very supportive, very. So
Which year was it when you went to officer candidate school?
I I left on March 17th of 1968, and March 17th is an important date because in our country we celebrate St. Patrick's Day that
Mhm.
day. And my family, at least my father's side, is Irish. So it was, but I wasn't in Finnegan's with everybody else drinking Guinness. I was on my way to Fort Knox, Kentucky. That was a hell of a day to start going to the army. I'll tell you. Anyway,
And after officer candidate school, you went to.
First to Fort Stewart and then to Fort Rucker. Um, Armor Branch, I was an armor officer, so I became an armor platoon leader, and I was driving tanks all over Fort Knox, which was really kind of fun, but not what I wanted to do. Not sorry. So Armor Branch, you get all the helicopter slots you wanted, but to get in fixed wing, they only had two. So I I figured, well, I took the exam and passed it, the written exam, and I went and I took my flight physical and I passed it. But I told admin to hang on to everything, and then I went to platoon headquarters of my uh, basic company headquarters, and made a phone call to Armor Branch in Washington D.C. and talked to a Colonel Patterson there. And I said to him that I wanted to go to fixed wing flight school. And he said, "Why do you want to go?" I said, "Because my father was a B-24 pilot, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well," and I said, "I just want to follow my father's footsteps. And he Stearman's, and he did this, he did that. I really want to do that." And so there was a long pause and he said, Lieutenant, and I was a second lieutenant at the time. He's a colonel. He said, Lieutenant, what did your father do after the war? I said he's an airline pilot for Trans World Airlines. And Patterson said, "The Army's not going to train you to be an airline pilot, son." And I thought, well, okay, I'll I'll we'll just make do. So I said, "Yeah, but I really want to go." And he gave me the slot. I
Okay.
walked out the door of the office, and there's another guy followed me in. His name is Frank Brackett. I haven't seen him in years. But I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm calling Armor Branch. I want to see if I can get one of those fixed wing slots." And I said, "I just got one. And if you screw this up for me, I'm coming after you." So he got it as well. And he went flying for Braniff after the war, which is gone. But anyway, that's how I got there. And then I had to
Uh,
go and explain to my folks what I'd done this time. And they were a little bit easier on me.
which fixed wing airplanes did the Army had in this time? You had the Bird Dog, the Beaver,
They had bird dogs, beavers, otters. They had just gotten rid of the
others.
caribou.
Okay.
Yep. They had beach barons for training. They had beach queen hares that they use for mapping and mostly in the Middle East. And they did that. They also did a radio relay thing in Vietnam in the Baron. And then they had a beach king hare. These were all prop jobs now that they used for liaison and flying generals and stuff like that. So those were the airplanes. I initially flew the Otter for about 3.5 weeks in Vietnam and tucked my way out of it
Mhm.
and got to the bird dog unit.
So, but the Army never had any kind of attack aircraft like the Sky Raider or something.
Nothing. No,
Nothing. Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
no. We pretended we were attack airplanes.
Yeah, 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 of course. You flew the Bird Dog like the Stuka.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, that's interesting. So, and after Fort Stewart, where you had the training in the Cessna 172,
Yes.
uh, you came to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and also straight into the Beach Baron for the instrument rating.
Instrument ticket. Yep. And we
Yeah.
did that. And then went to the bird dog.
Okay.
And we flew the second half. First, we got the instrument training at Rucker. And then the second half of flight school, the last part, was divided into two parts. One, you learn how to fly the bird dog. And two, and I use this term very loosely, they taught us tactics. It teach us squat. No, nothing. But it was called tactics. And I think what I remembered out of all of that was how to make a low level approach and landing short field in the bird dog. That was it. That was
Bird
tactics.
Dog was your first tail dragger you flew?
Never flew one before until that bird dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it to get from the Beach Baron, a twin engine, into the Bird Dog?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I had a great instructor
Okay.
in the first part of it, this guy Ray Carl. He was with the 220th. He had just come back from Vietnam, and he in one of our many discussions, he said that the flying as a fact is
Where is it? Here.
although yeah, that's him. That's
Yeah.
right. Flying as a fact is like having a bullseye with a propeller on it, and he was right. Um, he's the only guy I know that traded in I think he had a yellow Stingray, a vet, and or no, it was the light blue, a blue Stingray. He traded it in for a yellow dune buggy. And I remember we saw that thing in the parking lot and just howled with laughter. And because we said, Carl, the other way you do that is if you are so drunk you couldn't see straight. And to get rid of a vet for that thing.
Yeah, I already had the interview with Ray. Did you hear it?
I did. I did. Yeah, he was I hadn't talked to him in ages, and he showed up for the very first interview that I did with Bud Gibson, and he was on for it, and we laughed at each other, and it was just nice to reconnect. We had a bunch of conversations, but it was nice to reconnect with him. But out of the blue, and he was one of those guys you never forget. You would never forget him, Fred. He would just
Okay.
he was
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
I had big fun doing the interview with him. Yeah,
very funny.
absolute fine, and really a fine guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the endorsement for the tail dragger endorsement, the Army didn't really have a tail dragger endorsement like the FEA requests today. So they just put you into the bird dog, and
Yeah.
you took off, or did you have to taxi in the beginning to get the
Well,
feeling? How was
we,
it?
we taxied out. I think Ray was on the pedals with me sitting in the back. But pretty much it was an explanation of how he wanted me to do it. And you pull the stick full back in your gut when you were taxiing, and just he said you're light and gentle, it'll steer. You don't want to do too much differential braking. Just go, take your time, go slow. So we did.
Mhm.
We did. And then on the crosswind landings, I remember that the way he explained the crosswind landing was very simple. He said, you're going to fly it in a crab. You know how to fly it in a crab? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay. And then when you get down and you start to round out, he said, start thinking about kicking the crab out, keeping the nose down the center line. And don't try to paint the airplane on the ground. Let it clunk on the ground.
Mhm.
And then you just keep that stick full in your gut and stay on those rotor pedals, and you keep that nose in the middle.
Mhm.
And he said, if you need to use the aileron into the wind, that's what you do. And I said,
Mhm.
well, I think I can do that. So we did. And I never had a bit of trouble with it.
Okay. Okay.
I just didn't. It was just one of those things. I just did not have no problem, period. And when I transitioned at the airline into the 737, and it was the first jet I'd ever flown. And I remember going into LA, my first flight coming back from Las Vegas, and I was flying it as a co-pilot. And we had a breeze out of the south. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And so I just let the airplane alone. Nose went over to the aimed south. I kicked it around, put the wing down. I said, I'm driving a bird dog.
Okay.
Yeah. And it worked. That's everybody makes this so hard. You pull up, the airplane goes up. You push down, the airplane goes down. Pretty simple. I don't care how big it is or how little it is. They all work the same.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, it's your brain that you got to tell. Believe me when I tell you this, just, and then you do it.
And did you also have the tactics with Ray, or was there another instructor?
No, he did. Ray was the only instructor I had in the bird dog. He did everything
Okay. Okay.
until we got to tactics, and then I got a different guy. But he didn't talk so much about flying as he talked mostly about not getting lost and
Mhm.
navigating. So that was essentially it. But Ray, I learned how to fly that airplane because Ray showed me how.
Mhm. I was always, I couldn't really understand why, because all of the instructors that you guys had at Fort Rucker, Alabama, were experienced bird dog pilots that have already made a tour in Vietnam. So they came back, they all knew what's going on over there. So why wasn't the teaching more intense to prepare you for what's coming?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And when Ray and I talked about this, and he said exactly what you said. He couldn't understand why we didn't discuss this with our students when we, as veterans of that war, got back. He didn't tell me, and I did tell mine. We did talk about this, but I thought, somebody's got to say something here. But essentially, it was not what Ray was talking about. Was that the how to fly, how to avoid not getting killed, was not part of the curriculum, and it should have been.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't. So what happened was the the techniques that you use were either one, you recognized it right off the bat. I got to do this, or this is going to happen, or somebody said to you, do this, or this is going to happen. And eventually you figured it out. You realized, like, the Air Force guys, except for the Coveys that we work with, but most of the Air Force FACs operated at 1,500 feet above the ground, and they were flying for the most part O2s. So they were stuck up there. If if fighters were called in on a target, we're going to run an airstrike, and I happen to be also on that mission, I'd be down in the weeds. The Air Force guy'd be up at 1,500 feet. He would get the rundown from the fighters, and then he would turn them over to me. And I'd mark the target, and I'd adjust them because I was down on the treetops, and he couldn't. They wouldn't come down. we had the same rule, 1,500 feet, but we also knew that that was crap. You couldn't see anything.
Mhm.
You couldn't, it wasn't where you wanted to be. And so if you were going to do this job, you needed to do it so that it actually worked. You weren't just wasting your time flying around in circles out there. And that meant getting down to where you could see and you could see the target, mark it, and then direct the fighters accurately to it. And you couldn't do that at 1,500 feet. Didn't happen.
But maybe this was a tactic from the army, not to scare you as a young pilot, uh, to keep those informations back. Because what's absolutely insane, when I started the interviews, I thought, yeah, let's talk with two or three gentlemen, because I think it's all the same. No, everyone, really everyone, has a complete different story, and everyone had another tactic to attack the. It's insane because you had space to evolve yourself.
Fast. Had to do it quickly.
Yeah.
You had to do it quickly. And there wasn't a whole lot of time to sit and study and think, well, maybe tomorrow I'll try this or I'll try that. When you realize, at least for what we were doing, how intense the ground fire was, how difficult it would be to survive that if you weren't thinking ahead. There were some things that you just knew to do. And one of them was to fly sideways or fly crooked. And if you didn't do that, you're going to get nailed because they'd always aim off the nose. So yes, you flew in a crab. You buried your left foot or your right foot. And you put opposite aileron, and you flew like this, or you never flew straight and level. You bobbed and whatnot. You had a rule running a photo recon. We had a rule, myself and Phil Phillips, the guy that I flew with most of the time, that we made one pass and we didn't come back. So the photographer didn't get the photos he needed. Screw you, Jack. We're not going back in there. And the only time we did, the one time we violated the rule, photographer got killed, and I thought Phil and I were going to die. So you got to stick. You got a game plan. You got to stick to it. And
But that's interesting. I didn't know that you are flying in a slip a little bit.
yeah,
So that the nose was pointing in another direction. That
they they aimed off the nose. They led the airplane off its nose.
of
So
course.
he's going to shoot over here, but I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And that makes it. The other thing you did, and one of the main reasons why you stayed down on the treetops was because your rate of closure over the ground was much quicker at a low altitude. You the same speed. You're not going any faster. You're doing about 105 knots max in that airplane, and maybe 105 knots if you were going straight down. But it's passing over an open space, low level. You go over it much quicker. If you're up here, hanging up here, they got all kinds of time, all kinds of time. So you didn't want that. The other thing you never did, if you started taking ground fire, you never climbed. Never climbed. Because once you pull that nose up, you slow down, you exposed your belly or your backside, and you were a target. Don't do that.
So you kept your flight level at treetop and just moved right, left, or whatever.
Whatever, and like this.
Up and
So
down. Okay.
yeah, up and down, sideways, and get it done and get out of there. The guy that we lost was it was his first mission, and we explained to him how difficult it was going to be. And I don't think he was impressed at all that that section of Laos, the area at Laos that we were going into, was just hellacious. And we found a monstrous base camp, and we'd never seen it before, and we found it. And so I watched my wingman come back over the ridge and start in, even though he came in from a different direction, he went back. And that's when all hell broke loose. So,
Yeah.
you know, just you make rules, you got to stick with them.
Mhm.
But nobody told us any of that. I remember my good friend John Myers, who I actually took his place at the Command and Control Central up at FOB2. I asked John on the very first night I got there, I said, what do I do to make these things miss? And he told me fly sideways.
Mhm.
He said, fly sideways. We had a guy come up before I got there who eventually went on to fly for United Airlines. He was a warrant officer. And on his very first mission, he was told, if you see something on the ground, remember where it is, but don't turn and look at it. Don't turn around like this and look down at it. He said, you turn like that, you're turning the airplane. It's
Mhm.
going to turn. And they're going to shoot you down. And sure enough, they go over this something he saw, and he turned. And the next thing you know, he is stalling this thing out in a bomb crater because they shot him up and the airplane was wrecked. He got out of that thing. He in the back seat got out, and North Vietnamese were running down a road, down a trail to get them, and they got helicopters in and pulled him out. He got back to Khartoum, where FOB2 was, CCC, got back to Khartoum, did not pass go, did not collect $200 like a Monopoly game. He simply packed his clothes and went back to Camp Holloway and said, I ain't doing this again. And nobody held it against him. Why would you? And there were a couple guys that did that. They realized what they had gotten themselves into and left. But that was, nobody said to you, stay on the treetops. Nobody said to you, fly sideways. Nobody said bounce up and down. None of that. That was never passed on in flight school. Never. Nobody ever brought it up. The only thing they showed me how to do, did it when I got to Vietnam, was how to make a grease pencil mark on my windshield so that I could more or less bore sight my rockets. That was it.
Okay. So you had no stick in front of the cowling, like some of the guys had? Nothing.
No, no.
You just used the grease pencil. Okay, that's it. Okay. Okay. So when you came to Vietnam, uh, two or three pilots I asked, they said they left the plane, and the first what they recognized was the smell. It was a complete different smell.
It was, and you had to think for a while. You had to sort out what it was you were smelling, and you could smell the rotten vegetables, and you could smell the animal feces that was being used as fertilizer. You could smell the cooking oil, but you could also smell the jasmine, and you could also, if when you got away from heavily populated areas, you could smell the jungle. You could smell the foliage. You could, and this was all in the air. And actually, it was quite pleasant when we flew out to the area of operations from Khartoum, flying over Laos, which was heavily jungled and heavily mountained, not like Cambodia, which was flat, but Laos was much different. But when you got away from those population centers, and of course you had your windows open, it was absolutely sweet, the smell of the air. And was it humid? Yeah, it was humid, but you were up at a couple of thousand feet going to the target, and it was cooler then. And so it was a time where you could look out the window and you could recognize the beauty of what you were flying over. And that let you get back in touch with that thing which made you a human being. And that was important. You needed that touchstone, because if you didn't have it, doing what we were doing in the chaos and a lot of times the catastrophe of every day, you could get lost in that and you could lose yourself in that. But if you looked and you allowed those things to affect you and affect your heart really, then you stayed in touch with that thing that let you see the beauty, to feel the beauty and internalize it. One of the things I wondered as I got closer to the end of my tour, Fred, was how do how do I get myself back after what I've just done for the last 10 months? Where's the switch that turns the war off? Where's the switch that stops the dreams? There wasn't one. You just had to sort of grow out of it. And I think that's the reason why I wrote the book, was to get it out, because nobody talked about what we did. There were so few of us. And the other special forces units that were running recon across the border, the one up in Da Nang, FOB1, and then the one in Ban Me 2 at FOB3, they didn't have bird dogs assigned to them like FOB2 did. We were the only ones. So we were the only ones who were called SPAF, Sneaky Pete Air Force. That was the name that the Special Forces guys gave to us. And so that's what we used as our call sign instead of Headhunter. We were SPAF.
Mhm. But when you came from the States to Vietnam, you had your orders. How can I imagine this? You left the plane, and where did you go then to get your orders? Did the helicopter pick you up and take you to the unit? How was that?
Not till 2 days later. We got to the Trang at night in the dark. And I went to I found somebody aimed me in the direction of an orderly room. I went there, told him who I was. The guy checked me off a roster, and then another enlisted guy took me to a shack that had no screens on the windows and no screens over the door. And he gave me a poncho liner, and he said, "You can sleep here, Lieutenant." So I did. Me, my duffel bag, my rifle, and in this shack, and I didn't have any mosquito repellent, and the mosquitoes just chewed my face up.
Okay.
I woke up in the middle of the night. I could barely see. I had to go to the bathroom, but my eyes were swollen shut from so many mosquito bites. I managed to find my way to the little medical building, and I found a medic in there. He gave me a shot of cortisone and rubbed my face with it, and then he said, "You can sleep on this gurney, but I can't turn the lights out." So I wound up sleeping on the gurney, and the next morning I woke up, and my face was just cratered. I mean, I had so many mosquito bites, couldn't shave. But from there, I reported to a major who sat behind a desk, and he was almost as big as the desk was, and he was just a huge guy, and he was just as bored as can be. And he began to give me a briefing about Vietnam, and you could see all these red pins and blue pins on this map behind him, and the red pins were the Vietnamese, and the blue pins were us. And we were all on the coast, and the red pins were everywhere else. And somehow he conveyed to me the notion that this indicated that we were winning. And I looked at all those red pins and I thought, I don't think so, pal. So, but I got my orders up to Da Nang, and I went up there and flew a single engine Otter for 3 weeks. And I checked out in the Otter at Fort Ord and then went and did this. And I was so bored with all of this that I wound up back down at the company headquarters in Quin Nhân and asked the company commander if I could be transferred. And he told me that he didn't want anybody in his unit that didn't want to be there. And so he sent me up to the Central Highlands. So I went from the 18th Aviation Company, which was an Otter outfit, big tail wheel, big radial engine, a
Yeah.
lot of fun to fly, a lot of fun to fly, but boring as all get out, and up to the Bird Dog unit.
Mhm.
And I got there, and the executive officer, Don Ship, who was another one of the biggest guys I've ever seen. I don't know how the hell he got in a Bird Dog. He's so big. He played. He was an offensive lineman, American football, for the University of Texas Arlington. So you can imagine he had to go 6'3" anyway. He had to go well over 250. It's just huge. But he said, "We got two jobs. There are two jobs. You have a choice." He said, "You can stay with the fourth platoon, and if you're there, you're going to do this, 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 and this. You're going to have these extra duties." And I said, "Well, what are the extra duties?" And he named a bunch of junk off that would just sound like a bunch of nonsense. And he said, "Or you can go to the second platoon, and that's up in Khartoum." And I thought, well, there's a good deal there because I'm away from the company. So the company commander can't yell at me because he's not there. I could be up in Khartoum and hiding out. And I said, what are the extra duties up there? And he said, I don't think there are any. And I said, so, okay, I'll do that. And the next thing you know, I was getting a top secret briefing going into Laos. Well, I got up there, I had no idea what I volunteered for. And now I knew.
That's interesting because this was before the Ravens were there, or was it at the same time?
At the same time, and essentially the mission was the same thing. Ravens were working for Hmongs, so they were pretty much exclusively working for Laotian troops. We were working with our guys who were special forces guys, but the recon teams were made up of 1, 2, or 3 U.S. guys, and then 6 or 7 indigenous troops like Montyards or these other guys called Nungs, and they were ethnic Chinese who were born in Vietnam. And they all got paid to do this. And they were tough guys. All of them. The Yards and the Nungs, tough guys. And they were great fighters.
You sent me a picture of your bird dog. So just let me check this one here. So that's you. Okay. So
yeah.
but you flew into Laos with the United States Army markings.
It's exactly what it looked like.
That's interesting. I always thought that this is a kind of secret mission, and all markings were gone. Yeah.
The guys that went in on the ground, they had sterile uniforms. They could wear whatever they wanted. So the recon teams had no identification on them. The air assets were all marked. So we had U.S. Army. The helicopters had the same thing on the sides of the Hueys and the gunships. It all said United States Army. That was the airplane I flew. And the only ones that you saw that would remove their identification when occasionally we would have a C-130 or a C-123, but almost a C-130 land in Khartoum. And then from Khartoum, they would go on somewhere. And at Khartoum, there was a crew change. So Air Force guys got off and some other guys got on. And in the back, behind the trailing edge, on the fuselage, just in front of the horizontal stabilizer, there was a panel that they could pull out, and that had the stars and bars, the Air Force insignia on it. They could take that out and put a blank one in.
Okay.
And then they went somewhere.
Okay. But your mission with the bird dog, it was still a secret mission because officially the United States have never been in Laos.
We never were there.
Yeah.
Old figment of your imagination. No, we were there, obviously, but what we were supposed to say was that we were looking for a downed airplane. And so that's what we were supposed to be doing. And I knew that sounded like so much baloney that, oh, yeah. And in fact, on more than one occasion, I had a guy come up on our supposedly secret frequency and say hello, and he was North Vietnamese, so they knew they had the frequency. One morning, I had a guy get on the radio, and he said, "Good morning, Captain." I'm sorry, Captain. He said, "Good morning, Daiwi Doherty."
Daiwi is captain. Yeah.
Daiwi is captain, and Doherty is Doherty. That's me.
Okay.
And I thought, holy shit.
Yeah.
I never forgot that. It only happened once, but it did never have to happen again. It was just one of those things that, oh my God, this is all supposed to be secret. We had a funny little wheel that we used to encode words. and we carried it, and it changed. The code changed every day, but we had it, and I'm sure they must have had one too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they had people that were working in our compound that were working for them as well.
Yeah.
That I'm positive of.
Yeah.
So,
but hey, that's scary because you think you're on a top secret mission and he calls you by your name. Oh,
yeah,
God.
well, I also knew, I also realized, and it didn't take me long to figure this out, that a lot of times I had to fly by myself.
Mhm.
And I went over in Laos alone, nobody else in the airplane but me, and maybe I was a single ship mission. If I got shot down then and survived getting the airplane on the ground, I figured that I'd get captured probably. I'll say they killed me, but I didn't think they'd kill me right off the bat. They would capture me and they would torture me and then they would kill me. So I made sure that in the breast pocket of my flight suit, I carried 2 rounds of 38. And in case if I emptied my revolver, I had those. And those were specific, yeah, they were for me.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, I mean, there are some things that you come to these realizations that
Mm-hmm.
this is entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so you come to grips with that and you deal with it as best you can.
Yeah, but that's the deal you made. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, somebody asked me once if I could turn a mission down. And I thought about it for a minute and I thought, how the hell would I do that? How would I do that? If infantry guy, some colonel says, take that hill. And so up he goes, and what I get to see, I don't like the way that looks down there. I don't think I want to go. I don't think it'll work. It's a good way to go to jail.
Oh, yeah. And so far, from all the videos that I saw and all the articles that I read, the Vietnamese didn't treat the American prisoners well.
Really?
It's no,
No.
there was so much hate, incredibly. No, have you ever went back to Vietnam?
No, I didn't. I had when I was after I retired from Delta, I went to work for Boeing and I was instructing flight instructing in Korea, and we
Mhm.
used to have to do a familiarization flight every 6 months. And the airline that I was working for through Boeing um, went to Ho Chi Minh City and went to Hanoi, and one of the guys said, "You want to come with us and do your FAM ride, your familiarization ride there?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I would actually. I'll do that." And so he went to whomever was in their training department, said, "Well, take Captain Doherty with us," and they said no. No. So I didn't get to go, and it's just as well. I didn't. I don't really want to go back.
Yeah.
I spent that time there, and then I spent 9 years in teaching in Korea, uh, and I figured I've done my share of the Orient and don't really
Mm.
need to do it.
You've been 9 years in Korea. Wow.
I did
Wow.
after Delta.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was your family with you?
No,
No?
what we did was we went over for a month, came back for a month, went over for a month, came back for a month,
Ah, okay.
and so I commuted back and forth, and
Mm.
but that was the job, and it was a good one, and
Mm.
so because then we had to retire at age 60 from the airline.
We're 60. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah, so we did, and it turns out I thought, well, you interviewed Charlie Finch, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Finch. I knew Finch um, at Fort Rucker right after I got back from Vietnam. He was leaving. He was getting out of the service. And he went to work for Delta. And I ran into
Yeah.
Charlie. I ran into Charlie a couple of times. We actually I was getting onto an airplane that he was getting off.
Okay.
Uh, so we swapped airplane. But and I said hello to him. There weren't many bird dog pilots with the airline. There were a couple, but not many. And
Mhm.
I was the only Army pilot in my new hire class. We had 33 guys
Mhm.
in my hire class, and I was the only bird dog pilot. When I stood up and told everybody what I did, there were a couple of guys in the back of the room that booed. They booed the airplane. How did you do that? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it is insane, yeah. And I was always searching for an explanation. How could you guys have such big balls and be so brave? Yeah, but I think the reason is also because you were so young.
you, you know, you. I think there are a couple of things that happen, and one is, you you said you'd do something, and when you say you're going to do it, you kind of got to do it.
Hmm.
Wouldn't want anybody to say, "Well, you gutless bastard," no, don't do that. I don't want that. Um, and then when you realize what you've done and the consequences that are attached to what you've done, you then begin to rationalize all of this, and you maybe first thing you say is, well, it's very patriotic of me to do this, and then you move on to something else. The reality was that you came to grips with the idea that you could die, and and but you still had to put one foot in front of the other. You still had to keep going, and so you said, okay, this is a given, the possibility. So I'm not going to think about it anymore. What I'm going to do is think about how not to die and what I
Okay.
have to do not to die. And and I know certain things are going to happen, and I've just got to work around them. And so you had to compartmentalize your actions. You had to compartmentalize the way you thought. I'm going to do this to complete this mission. And this is how I'm going to fly the airplane to complete this mission. And this is how I'm going to get to where I need to go to complete this mission. And then this is how I'm going to get out of there
Hmm.
and complete the mission. Those are the things. And you did that step by step by step. The other thing I did when we first got there, was I tried to figure out how to fly the airplane when it was all shot up.
Mhm.
So I said, how do I make it go up and down? Well, I can use the throttle. If I add power, the nose is going to pitch up. If I pull the power off, the nose is going to fall down. If I need to make a turn, I can I can take the logbook and put it out the window and hold it
Yeah,
sideways,
yeah,
and I can do it on either side of the airplane. If I
yeah,
wanted to turn faster than using the logbook, and I didn't care about making a left-hand turn, I could just open the door,
yeah.
you know, and and so that's how I could do. And I used to practice flying approaches like that. I didn't land. I figured I would accept a full stall landing and roll up in a ball just as long as it didn't kill me. But I could get the airplane on the ground, and that's
Wow.
and that that's what I was thinking.
But you were practicing this.
Yeah,
That's insane. Okay.
I used to have the kid. Sometimes I had a Vietnamese observer with me, and I used to make him fly, and he didn't want to fly, but but he wanted to sleep in the back seat when we finished the mission. But I wouldn't let him, and I'd say, "You got to fly because I'm going to die up here if you don't get me back. So this is what you do." And he did it, and he could get the airplane down pretty well to 100 feet, but that's as far as I let him go.
Yeah.
And then I would take the airplane and we'd go ahead
And,
and land.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So you didn't have the had the feeling that you are kind of bulletproof. So you always also thought about your protection. Did
yeah,
did, did you have the armored seat?
you know, I thought we did. I
Okay.
thought we did have an armored seat. The guy that I flew with most of the time, Phil Phillips, said he didn't remember having an armored seat, but I thought we did. I know I sat on my flat vest,
Okay.
and I had a parachute behind me that I never put on because I was never going to jump anyhow. I was never high enough, but I figured that would slow something down. I used to carry I originally had a shoulder holster for the 38, but I thought that was worthless and uncomfortable. So I got a regular gun belt, and then I could take the holster and put it down between my legs so that I was protected from both top and bottom, so that I could have children at a later date if I survived.
Yeah, okay.
But that was it. That was the only. And then I had an AR-15, or a CAR-15, which I bungeed to the door of the airplane on the right side. I
Yeah.
had the pistol, and then I had the rockets. And originally, I used to carry frag grenades, and I did that for about 3 or 4 days. And I carried a whole bunch of them on a wire behind my seat. I could reach over and grab them. And when I took a whole bunch of ground fire one day, one of those first couple of days that I was working for the CCC, I realized that a bullet could hit that frag grenade and kill me.
Oh yeah.
So I thought, these have got to go.
Mhm.
Because I'm not a bomber anyway. So why am I screwing around with this? So I got rid of them all, and I just carried smoke grenades or white phosphorus.
Mhm.
And the white phosphorus scared me much more than the smoke grenades, but you had to have them because the smoke grenades, the smoke didn't rise straight up. It kind of spread out, and it would finally poke its way up through the canopy of the jungle, and it could be 100 yards down a road, and it not remotely near to where you were. The white phosphorus burned so hot, smoke went straight up.
Yeah, because the temperature, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And so, I did I have smokes? Yeah, but I mostly carried the Willie Pete, and then I had white phosphorus in at least two of the rockets all the time.
Did you also use HEs?
Yep, HEs and flechettes, nails.
That's yeah. Okay.
Use those.
And
And
also with the variable time fuses?
don't remember a variable time fuse. I remember that the nose cone of the flechettes were perforated so that it would actually peel away, and that would arm the rocket. And the HEs, well, they were the same. They just had a.
But I think that the flechettes had those variable time fuses because they were used to explode about, let's say, 20 feet above the ground. They they didn't impact, or
No, there wasn't an impact. That was not impact.
yeah,
That was so the nose would peel away,
yeah.
and now at the further it went, the more the darts would disperse.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't hit somebody with a rocket 10 feet away and expect the darts to do anything with that kind of rocket. It had to arm, but once it did, they expanded as they traveled,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how the ones that we had worked.
Mm-hmm.
The HE may have had a fuse on it, but I sure don't remember ever arming those fuses. And I did a lot of rocket loading myself, so I gassed the airplane up by
Oh,
my. Oh yeah, well at at Khartoum where the airplanes were kept, that's where our crew chiefs were. But when we were out of Dakto, I gassed it and I loaded the rockets.
mhm.
So
That's
I mean,
interesting because all the other guys I spoke, it was always the crew chiefs that loaded the rockets.
if I loaded up in Khartoum, then the rockets would be there. The crew chiefs would have already had it loaded. But if I went to Dakto and then went on or went out and flew a mission and came back to Dakto, gas up and go back, then I was responsible for all of that with the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I did all of that, and I kind of liked it. I mean, I thought it was fun. Didn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to put them in, you know.
So you also put in the fuel and check the oil?
Sure,
Oh, okay. Okay.
sure.
So
Went over the airplane first thing in the morning, looking for tripwires and grenades and crap. But yeah, we did. It's my butt in the seat.
yeah, of course. You said you were checking for grenades. Where
Sure.
In the fuel tank or where?
Anywhere that you could put a grenade,
Oh,
up in the
okay.
engine, under the rudder pedals, anywhere. Very carefully, looking for
Okay.
a wire and or just a grenade. It just
So weren't your airplanes within a fence?
In Khartoum, it was in a revetment, but
Yeah.
I don't. I remember distinctly that airfield not being fenced off, and around it, along the length of the runway, maybe 100 feet off to the side, there used to be these platforms like watchtowers, except they were on stilts and they were covered. And at night, the whoever was out there, the regional forces, the guys with the white helmets, they would bang a gong and say all is well. And I remember listening to that once, and I thought anybody could bang that gong, man. You know,
Like those here?
yeah, yeah, like that. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And that's what they. I mean, I thought anybody could come walking up to this place. Dock Toe, which is what I think is where we are here, um, that wasn't the case. As you can see, there's wire and there's probably mines all over the place, and but not so much at Khartoum Airfield. But
Okay.
it was also a commercial airfield. So Air Vietnam, the airline, used to land there. Um, and I just thought anybody could march in here and you could
Yeah.
march. You know.
Yeah. Uh, Francis, can you tell me how a mission was over there? Who gave you the orders in the morning? How was that?
We usually got a mission assigned to us by either the S3, then the S3 was a major, he was the ops officer. Um, when I first got there, the major's name was Lake. I could be wrong. The second guy that came, and I'm not going to say his name, uh, the second ops officer hated us, and I have no idea why. I don't know what we did, but he just despised us. Um, or the mission could be assigned by the sergeant who ran the photo shop at Command and Control Central Khartoum FOB2. And this guy's name was Michael Buckland. And Michael lives in Anchorage and became a PhD in aviation science and taught aviation at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. And
Wow.
real smart guy. This is a great guy. Michael and I have been good friends for a very long time. But we would get our mission assignment from him. And the way that normal Army units came from the top down, at the way the Special Forces ran this particular mission at all three places, FOB one in Da Nang and the other one at Bambi 2 and then us in Khartoum, there was a major, and he was the major was the intelligence officer, and then there was the guy that ran the Photoshop who was a sergeant, and and then there was the S3 who was usually a major, and there may have been a sergeant attached to him. But this was the brain trust that came up with all of those missions, with who came up with the missions, and the NCOs had on the ground experience. They knew how to run a mission on the ground, and they knew how to find what they wanted to find. The intel officer, he knew the area that they wanted to go to, and the ops officer would be the one who would generally assign the team or coordinate the use of the team. So it was kind of an interesting theory that they gave the non-commissioned officer as much authority as they did, but it was a great system. And that's how we got our missions. The area of operations, the southeast corner of Laos, that was where we worked almost all the time. When you moved in closer to the border along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and there were areas there that were heavily defended with anti-aircraft weapons. The further west you got, um, or the further Yeah, further west you got, you into Laos, it got really wild. There wasn't much. There's CC, so you got to go up on an angle towards Cam Ramp above Adipo, and there's Dak To, and that's Kontum Dak To. And if you went up on about a 330-degree heading out of Dak To, that's pretty much where we were going to be. So
He, do you see my red point?
yeah, I can see the little red mark.
So this is Canton and
Go up to Dak To,
Dakto, yeah.
yeah, and then go to take your pointer up above the Zokong River. Keep going that way. That's the AO in there. Okay.
Ah, okay.
So if we went to Adipo, we were going too far. But you can also see the Mekong, and you can see the Mekong going north.
Yes.
So from Steng Treng and going north. We actually flew from Dak To all the way to the Mekong and back just before they ginned up Operation Tailwind.
So you
And
flew from Dakto here all the
yeah,
way down to the
all the way,
Mekong?
all the way over here to that road junction, see Adipo, and there's a road there. Keep going. And so we more or less flew along the Cambodian border out to the Mekong, turned around, flew north a little bit, and then came back into Vietnam.
Oh my God! Wow.
Not only that, this is why I was convinced that this S3 that showed up later, the guy with no name, he decided that we should fly looking for stuff, whatever we could find, truck parks and base camps and what just in preparation for this invasion, this tailwind. But when he was devising this thing, Fred, the weather was getting bad and it was starting to rain. You only have you got about what the hell did it think carry about 40 gallons of fuel
Mhm.
on the airplane? You got about 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. So if on a nice day, if you could fly in a straight line, you're going to save a little gas.
Mhm.
When you start getting into the monsoon season and the clouds are down, you're weaving through these valleys. So you're going this way, then you're going this way. So there is no straight line to get to where you're trying to go. And the possibility of running out of fuel grew exponentially as the weather got worse.
Yeah.
So I think the first time I flew to the Mekong, Phil and I did it together. And Phil flew one by himself, and I flew a couple by myself. And I thought, this is crazy. And the weather was getting worse and worse and worse. So I went into this guy's office and I said to him, Major, I need to explain this to you. This is what's happening. So my alternative, my only course of action here, if I get closed out behind me because of the weather, is I got to go to U-Bahn. And I said, I don't, I don't have a choice. I mean, I'm going to crash land someplace or force land someplace in Laos, or I got to go to U-Bahn. And I said, maybe you want to think about the length of these missions and where we're going. And he said to me, Captain, have you got your map with you? And we carried a gigantic map. Anyway, I had it in my uh, zippered pouch below my knee and all folded up. He said, let me have the map. And I handed it to him. And he proceeded to take a scissor and cut the map off with the Mekong. So Thailand disappeared in his wastepaper basket.
Mhm.
No shit. My map to Thailand was in his wastepaper basket. And he said, you're not going to Thailand, Captain. You're not going on R&R. I looked at him and I thought, are you? So
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say. And I thought the worst thing you could do now is to get into an argument with this guy. So
Mm.
don't.
But
And
he was no pilot at all.
no, no,
No.
no,
Okay.
no. So I just said, okay. And I picked up what remained of my map. And I didn't salute him. I just walked out. And when I got outside, I stopped for a minute and collected my wits about, trying to get my wits about me. And I thought, well, you dope. You got a great big map on the wall in the flight line shed out at Khartoum, and it's got Thailand on it. And you know that at a Dokto, if you pick up a heading of about 330, you're going to get in the neighborhood. And if you get up at altitude, you can start yelling over guard, and somebody will find you, and they'll give you a DF steer, and they'll take you to Thailand. They'll take you to U-Bahn. And I kept hoping that it would happen so that I could call this major up on the phone and say, "Wish you were here, pal." But it was one of the. Those are the things that you don't understand.
Mhm.
Those are the things that make no sense. And why would you do a thing like that? Why would you jeopardize someone and jeopardize their life just because you wanted to be a dope?
Mhm.
I don't understand. I just don't.
It is hard to understand, to be honest.
You got me. I mean,
Yeah.
to this day, I will never understand it.
Mm.
And we didn't have. There weren't a lot of people like that. I'm glad to say there was one other guy who was our platoon leader in Khartoum, and he was not working the mission with us. He didn't. He worked for MACV, but he was as bad, and we just stayed away from him.
Mm.
Couldn't, it just was he. Everything we did bothered him. He wanted to know what we were doing. We couldn't tell him,
Mm.
and we made a big deal of not telling him. We can't tell you. We Bill had stolen a Jeep right when I got there, and he stole it from he stole it from a MACV major, and this was great. But he shows up, he's got this Jeep, he gets it back over to the Special Forces compound. The guys in the motor pool take the Jeep, they remove all of the numbers off it, paint it black, and underneath the windshield, which folded down, there was a little brace there, and they painted SPAF in there, SPAF in white, and then they renumbered it with Special Forces numbers that they made up, and so now we had this Jeep that we drove back and forth, and we wouldn't let this platoon leader use it. We didn't give him a ride in it, and it would drive him crazy. So when I left, I had the keys to the Jeep. Phil was already gone. He gone, but I had the keys to the Jeep, and I gave them to a lieutenant who was taking my place. And that platoon leader was going, "Batch, give me the keys to the Jeep. You're never gonna get them here. Take."
Oh God.
I never understood guys like that. I just didn't. It was just more. It it was hard enough. All of it was hard enough. Why would you make it harder?
Harder, yeah. Yeah.
It just and you reconciled yourself to so many things, to being hot and sweaty and not ever getting to the mess hall for a real hot meal, and which we never did, and stuff like that.
Mm.
But you acclimated to that. You said, okay, this is what I have to do in order to do what I'm supposed to do. But then you have some guy show up that wants to give you a hard time. Some guy show up that cuts your map off at the Mekong River so that you he thinks he's screwing you over. That's a mystery to me.
Mm.
A mystery to me.
Yeah, stupid reaction, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, you got the orders, and then uh, what kind of orders did you get? Let's say that you should cover a ground mission, that you should take aerial photographers with you, or did
They would
they
have
tell you if you fly alone or if you're having a backseater?
They would tell you if you had a backseater. They would tell
Okay,
you where they wanted you to go. They would tell you whether you were doing photo recon or you're doing bomb damage assessment or you're just going out looking for stuff.
okay.
And that was a general, and they gave you the area. And then the rest of it, the rest of it was up to you, how you approached it, how you did it. On occasion, we took with us a team leader, a special forces guy who was a recon team leader. They would call him the 1-0. He could be a captain, he could be a lieutenant, he could be a sergeant. It was the guy with the most experience, not with the most rank, and rank had nothing to do with it. It was,
okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
but that's smart. What?
it made sense to me.
Yeah.
A new guy who happened to be a lieutenant, and he wants to take over from a sergeant who's had months and months and months of experience or years of experience. No, I don't think so. The guy that was killed in the back of Phil's airplane, the photographer, he did that. He took the mission from another guy who had a ton of experience. And the guy with a ton of experience said to this new guy, this new sergeant photographer, maybe you want to let me do this today. This is a really bad area. And he said, no, 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 I want to. So, and that's, so we, it wasn't a way it should have worked. And when he did that, it blew up in his face, or actually it blew his face off. But that was, so the way they worked it, and then how you conducted the mission was, they never told you how to do that. You did it. You figured out the altitude you wanted to approach it at. You figured out how you were going to get into the AO and the area of operations, and how you were going to maneuver through it. And but so those were always, it was, the order essentially said, go there and get this. And getting there and how you got this was totally up to you.
But when you have been over there in Laos, and for example, you saw on the Ho Chi Minh Trail a truck convoy, did you need any kind of clearance to shoot at them, or how was it?
No,
No.
you didn't. You could get air, and if you could get it, you used it. If like Buckland and I found a choke point on a road where the trucks would meet, and then they would offload what they had, and these guys who came north would turn around and go back south. These guys who came south would turn around and go back north. And the drivers only drove one section of the trail, and then they changed. And so it was a daisy chain of drivers all the way down, but they knew the road intimately. And but
Yeah, but that's smart. Okay.
at those choke points now, you had a bit of a traffic jam. And if you could catch that, then you had maybe 10, 15 trucks in each direction. And you got the ones in front, and you got the ones in back, so that nobody could move, and then you just let her rip. You got everything you could get in there on those guys. Preferably A1s as opposed to F4s or F100s. I'd take an A1 any day of the week. More gas, more ammo, or more ordnance, and they could stay for a lot longer, and they actually were more accurate. So
especially the A1 Sky Raider, it was a flying tank, or
oh God, it was, yeah. Well, that was we loved that airplane when it showed up, that A1E, and we had a team in contact not long before I went home. And anyway, I had an Air Force FAC there with me, and I was down low. So the A1 lead begins to give the FAC his rundown. That guy went by me. This is the guy. This is the guy that did this. And
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he's giving the Air Force FAC this rundown. I got this many minigun, and I got these many bombs, and I got this bunch of nape. And at the very end, because we had a team on the ground, he said, and I've got 6 rounds of 38 if you need it. So he was going to shoot his pistol out the window. I thought, well, that was pretty cool. It was funny, actually. But I thought, so I said to him, I said, the way things are going down there today, we may need that 38, so don't waste it. So anyway, it was, but he went. I don't think I was at 300 feet when this guy barreled past me, and I think his call sign was Spad, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they came out of U-Bahn. But God, I love seeing that thing. We call that thing a flying gin bottle. And
Okay.
every once in a while, you'd see uh, at a bigger Air Force base like Pleiku or whatnot, there'd be a bunch of these parked with Vietnamese Air Force markings on them.
Yeah.
And so the Vietnamese pilots would fly them. And even the biggest Vietnamese kid wasn't very big, wasn't very tall. And so on the rudder pedals, they used to have to take blocks of 2x4 screwed together to make the rudder pedals bigger so they could get to them. The kid that I taught how to fly from the back seat, he couldn't sit all the way back in his seat and reach the rudder pedals. So I said to him, "You got to hold on to the back of my seat, pull yourself up." And "Oh, I don't want to. I don't want to." "No, you have to."
uh, you flew over Laos. You see on the Ho Chi Minh Trail the trucks. How was the procedure to get the A1s?
You made a call to a C-130 that was orbiting overhead, and you could
Ah,
get them through him.
okay.
So direct air support control. And if you couldn't get a hold of them directly, and a lot of times you couldn't, you could get this guy, he'd get them. And then you talk to his call sign was Hillsborough. And there was another one up at night called Moonlight. And so they were up there all the time. But Hillsborough, I could talk to him and he could get me through direct air support control, or DASC is what we called it. He could get me fighters coming.
But this was no gunship. It was just a control center.
Yep. Yep. He was a
Ah,
big command center driving around up
okay.
there. And
Okay.
he could get me the fighters that I needed, A1s or F4s or somebody.
Okay. Okay. Did you also have those UE gunships?
Uh, Attached to CCC, and those guys were on standby all the time at Dak To. So they
Mhm.
would come from Camp Holloway down south of Pleiku, and they would fly up to Dak To, and they would gas up, and they'd be ready to go. They'd be
Okay.
full load, they'd be fully armed, and if we had a team on the ground and we got in trouble, we they could see the weather wasn't bad. We could get the Cobras, and they had the little LOH 3 man or 2 man observation helicopters, the flying
Ah,
P.
the Cobras even. Not only the UEs, also the Cobras. Okay.
Well, we could get Charlie model gunships, those were UEs, or we could get
Okay.
the Cobras, and along with the Cobras came the little Hughes flying peanuts, the OH-6s, the little
Yeah.
round jobbies.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was they called them a 100 kilo team, but those are the guys we could get in.
Okay.
And so I used them. We used them all the time when we did an insertion or an extraction, uh, put a team in or get a team out. But I also used them at Dak Siang on the 1st of April. Myself and there were 2 Charlie model gunships. We were the first airplanes on station over Dak Siang as it was being overrun, and I was able to get. We didn't have a team on the ground at that time from CCC, so I was able to get those gunships to uh, Dak Siang, and I believe that's probably why that camp wasn't overrun because we could get those guys to come in. And when I got there, it was just me and 2 Charlie model gunships. That was it. Trying to hold off like a regiment, and it was really quite something. It was really quite something.
Well, how can I imagine this? You flew over it. You saw the trucks. You made the radio call up to to the C-130. How long did it take until a Skyraider, a Cobra was there?
Sometimes they had these guys already up, and they
Ah,
could divert them.
okay.
So, and they would do that. Sometimes these guys would be up and whatever target they were going to didn't materialize. And so they would be coming back, but they'd have a load of ordnance. Sometimes I'd get some guys that had finished the mission, but they still had stuff left over, and they'd show up. So it was all hands on deck.
Okay. Okay.
If they scrambled out of Utapau or out of Ubon, it was going to take a little longer. But you didn't hang around. If I found a bunch of trucks on the ground, I was going to try to get an airstrike in. I'd see them. I sure as hell wouldn't turn and go back and go, oh, look, there are 20 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I keep going. Keep going. Fly away. Fly away. I know where you are. And so when I know that I've got those fighters on station, that's when I'm going back. And that's when I'm going to mark. And I'm going to mark the end guys, and I'm going to mark the middle guys. And I'm going to block it up.
Okay.
And then we're going to take them out.
Okay.
And that's how you did that. Sometimes a recon team would be put on the ground, and they would lay an ambush and wait to blow up one of those trucks. And that's they would take one in the middle essentially, maybe take the last guy in a line, and they would blow the tires out of the trucks and grab the driver, and they would haul the driver off with them, and take him as a prisoner. And so that occasionally happened.
You sent me this picture. I really like it because you see the rockets, and you see is this napalm? What is it?
This was some nape and some 250-pound bombs. We had found a section of the trail that disappeared into a ravine, and we'd lose it and couldn't find it. It just disappeared. And I stumbled on it one. I mean, I've been looking for it, and I saw a bridge, and so this ravine was so narrow, Fred, that I couldn't turn the bird dog in it. I had to do Dutch rolls up and down the side, and that trail, when I finally figured out where it was, it crossed that ravine 47 times. There were 47 bridges that they built.
Oh gosh!
So this is taking them out. So we completely destroyed 3 of them.
Okay.
I came back the next morning to see what had happened and whether or not we could get more fighters to take out the rest of it. And those bridges were rebuilt
overnight,
rebuilt. And
okay.
I looked at that and I thought, Francis, my boy, we are spitting into the wind here.
Yeah.
These guys they're not going away. They're not going to say, okay, King's X, we surrender. That's not happening.
Yeah, but they must have had massive manpower to do this.
Well, they did. They did. When this operation got going along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where we were putting these teams in, as the teams began to disrupt the traffic down the trail, the North Vietnamese began to assign more and more people to go after these teams and kill them. And so this is when they introduced the dogs, and they had trackers looking for them. This is when they used to put guys up in trees looking at a potential landing zone for an insertion. So they were called LZ watchers, and they used either whistles or they may have fired off a round to alert people that there was a potential for an insertion of a team. And they wanted to kill that team before it even got out of the LZ. So we did a lot of, when we put a team in, we a lot of times didn't put them right in the first LZ. We put them in another one. We did fake insertions and all that. We may put a team in right off the bat and then go and fake an insertion into 2 or 3 other LZs just to screw things. sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The dogs were the worst, and sometimes these guys would use our guys would use like red pepper on the trails, and then the dogs would sniff them and burn their noses.
Okay. Okay.
And Claymore mine ambushes, that sort of thing, tripwires. But it was really a cat and mouse game, and chances are we would the team would never complete its mission. Between the end of February in 1970 and until actually I went home, I think the casualty rate for these recon teams was up around 100%. And when I say casualty, I mean wounded or dead.
Hmm.
It was phenomenal. So long about the end of April, beginning of May, our mission began to change, and we stopped doing a lot of work with the recon team leaders, putting teams in, and our photo missions increased exponentially. The intel guys at CCC figured that a photographer and a pilot in a bird dog was a lot less expensive
Yeah, of
than
course.
10 guys on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a very old airplane, I might add. So
Mm.
I don't know, when was yours built? Do you know? Remember?
My bird dog is 1953, and I think most of the bird dogs you flew in Vietnam, they were also 55 or something around this. Yeah.
Mine was built in 1950.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah.
Most of them were A models, and they were sent back to Cessna, and they were rebuilt to be G models.
I flew Fs and Gs and Ds.
Yeah, but the Gs were originally A models. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
we had some, like the F, there was a fixed pitch prop, and then I think that the G had a variable pitch prop.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was, I mean, I started kindergarten in 1950, so that airplane was not much. I was just a little older than my airplane.
Yeah. uh, you made those ground strikes. Was there the risk of friendly fire?
No, there were no friendlies down there unless it was a team that we were, and then I knew where they were, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
so we, I would, if we had a problem, um, I would try to get them to an LZ, and I knew which LZ they were going to, or I could, if they were really in trouble, we could throw ropes down with slings, and they would clip onto the ropes, and we would pull them out that way. But they would use a
Ah,
mirror, or they would pop smoke, so I knew where they were, and I
okay.
confirmed where they were, and then we were pretty careful with the Cobras, especially, but they could get right on top of those guys
Okay.
and protect them that way with their minigun. And we
Uh,
would get the UEs to go in and throw the ropes down, or the ladders, or whatever the hell or get them to an LZ and get them out that way.
about the smoke, did you use different colors?
I would say to them, pop smoke,
Mm-hmm.
and then smoke would come up, and I would say, I see yellow smoke, and they
Ah,
would say, that's us.
okay. Ah,
But
okay.
I would never say to them, pop a red smoke, because there'd be 20 of them coming up.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I asked. Okay. Okay. And did you yourself also have different colors of smoke in the bird dog?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I had smoke grenades.
Ah,
And
okay.
yeah, so I could mark, if I'd run out of rockets, I could mark with something. But like I said, I prefer to use the Willie Pete.
Did you make the decision to carry Willie Pete's or AGs, or was it
Yeah, I did.
you
My,
did? Okay.
my call. my call. And if I knew that if I were going into a place where I had to mark, I knew to load Willie Pete rockets in my tubes. If I were going like the day I went back to Dak Siang with the two Charlie Model gunships, I didn't have Willie Pete's in there. I had flechettes in the inboard and HEs in the outboard.
Okay, I understand. But did you also fly sometimes with a mixture with Willie Pete's and HEs?
Yeah, I could fly Willie Pete's and HEs, Willie Pete's and nails.
Also mixed. Okay. Okay.
No, my call, but I get what I want.
And you on the picture on the book and also on the picture I showed you before, you were having 2 rockets on each wing, so you had 4 rockets in total.
That's it.
Okay. Okay.
Some outfits had 4 tubes under a wing. We didn't. We just
Yes.
had.
Okay. Because the planes over there, to be honest, the high temperatures and the humidity and your planes compared with the bird dogs that we fly today, oh my God, they were pretty heavy.
They were.
Because
They
yeah,
were.
you have all the boxes under the rear seat for communication, and they are really heavy. Yeah.
We didn't have all that communication equipment. The Air Force guys in the O-2s did, but we
Oh,
didn't.
okay.
We didn't. We had a HF, VHF, and a ADF,
Mm-hmm.
and HF, UHF, and an ADF. And
ADF, yeah.
yeah, and sometimes on our either on our VHF or UHF, we had a thing that we called it a coffee grinder radio, where it was a crank like this, where you
Yeah.
yeah,
You
one of those.
you should see it on the top right side of my
Yeah.
bird dog.
Well, you had a lot more toggle switches than I had too.
Yeah, there were 2 sorts of switches. There was a control panel with the 4 switches that you probably had, and this switch panel that I have, it was from the Air Force because the Air Force was able to shoot 16 rockets,
Yeah, not us.
and
I
they
wish
could select each rocket. Yeah,
we
yeah,
had we had 4 red cap switches, and that turned them on.
yes, yeah, yeah. This was the original Army version. Yeah,
That was it. That's what we had.
yeah.
And some guys, I mean, I know uh, they used to shoot the the car 15s out the window, but
Yeah.
they told us never to do that, only because the brass could come flying back into the cockpit, fall on the floor, and jam one of the cables.
Ah,
We had open channels.
yeah. Okay.
The rudder cables going back
Yes. Yeah.
into the ailerons, or rather elevators, so the brass could get in there and jam the thing. So they didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to fire that. And then my buddy John Myers, who told me to fly crooked, he went out and got himself a sawed-off M79 grenade launcher, so it looked
Mm-hmm.
like a big fat pistol.
Mm-hmm.
And he never test fired the thing, but he took it with him and aimed it out the window and fired it. Thank God that the round didn't go far enough to arm, because it clanked off his wingtip. And
Wow.
but because
Oh
he
my God.
one hand, so he fires this thing, and it drives his hand up, and he bangs the big piano hinge that held the window up, and there was a receiver thingy on the side of the weapon that practically took his thumb off. he's got he just practically took his thumb off. So now he's wounded and he's bleeding and his hand is swelling up and he's got to fly back. So he doesn't stop at Khartoum. He goes all the way down to, rather, he stops in Khartoum and goes into the medic, and the medic gives him a shot. And now somebody's got to fly him down to Pleiku, and he gets this thing all wrapped up and stitched up and everything else. And I found him in the officers club in Pleiku. I had to go down there for something, so I'm at Holloway, and there he is sitting at the bar. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he's feeling sorry for himself because he can't go flying, and he got this big ass bandage on his hand. What the hell did you do? So he explains this M79. I thought, you know, there's there's a whack job like you born every day.
But he didn't lose his thumb, or?
No, he didn't lose his thumb. He didn't. I just talked to him the other day. God, it was funny. It was funny.
Okay.
So he was sitting at the bar, Fred. He was drinking um, Crown Royal and milk. And I looked at that and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "It's Crown Royal and milk." He said, I think I'm getting an ulcer." And I said, "Oh yeah, the milk is going to soothe the ulcer in your stomach." None of this makes any sense to me whatsoever.
No, no. What kind of close air support could you arrange? So, Marines, Air Force,
Air Force,
Navy,
Air Force,
only Air Force. Ah, okay.
only Air Force, because we were so far over in the
Yeah.
lab that we would get a lot of times we get guys coming out of Thailand. The Marines were up in I Corps, and we didn't use those. Ray used them. Ray Carl used them. We didn't. And same thing with the Navy, who were off the coast. So maybe Charlie Finch used naval aircraft, but
Yes. Yeah.
we were
The
strictly,
A Force. Yeah.
yeah, no, we were strictly Air Force.
Okay. Okay.
F-100s, A1s, F4s, and sometimes an A-37, but that was that was an Air Force trainer, and the Vietnamese had those, and
Okay.
so that was essentially it.
And when you were flying in Laos, you were not able to control the Hmong pilots.
No,
No. Okay.
never.
So this was just as for the special unit for the Ravens.
We only guys we worked for, the only guys that I worked for were, but that was FOB2 in Khartoum, Command and Control Central.
Okay.
I no contact with anybody else. I knew the CIA guys in Khartoum, but I didn't work for them.
This this is again, it's ridiculous because you're the first pilot that tells me that you controlled the Air Force, because with all the other guys I spoke, they said they were not allowed to control the Air Force because the Air Force wanted that forward air controllers, Air Force pilots, control them. So it's so different in which area you're flying or operating. There are everywhere different rules. It's
It
so
was
strange to me because there was no clear rule for all over Vietnam.
the each one of those operations, the 1, 2, FOB 1, 2, and 3, operated a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And like I said, FOB 2, they were the only special forces long range patrol gang that had their own air force, and that was us. Over the course of its existence, FOB 2 and Command and Control Central, and I think they started in like around 65 or 66, ended at the end of 71. There were maybe a dozen pilots that flew that mission.
Yeah.
There were, I think, 5 or 6 that were killed.
Hmm.
And somehow the guys that I flew with, myself, Phil Phillips, Doug Kraut, and John Myers went home a little early, and then there was another guy, Jerry Ford, there. We all made it home. We all survived. And guys after me, Sinkowski and Pisacreta and another guy named Wood, and we lost guys. There were guys in front of me, Besser and a guy named Frank Wiesner, and they did not survive. So it was just, we were just lucky. I mean, we were really lucky.
Hmm. Did you fly single missions or two ship missions?
Both,
Both. Okay.
both, and you never knew.
Hmm. Hmm.
Bomb damage BDA was usually a 2-ship mission.
Hmm.
High ship and a low ship. Low ship was a photographer.
Hmm.
A lot of times recon was also a 2-ship mission. when we had a photographer. Sometimes we were by ourselves, and sometimes it was single ship with a photographer.
Uh, did you fly one mission a day or two missions a day?
All day. Flew all
Not
day.
all day, but every day one mission or every day two missions? One in the
Sometimes,
morning?
yes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon,
Two missions. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
every day. I
Okay.
think we got 2 days off when Scenic was overthrown in March, and there was a stand down because there's a government change in Cambodia, so everything stopped. I got 6 or 7 days off at R&R,
Mhm.
and that was it.
Oh, really? There was not a single day off. So you kept on
Unless it
flying
was,
every
unless it
day?
was, unless it was raining, unless it was the rain, unless let me rephrase that. Unless it was raining so hard that you couldn't see anything,
Oh,
then you were flying.
wow. Okay. You wrote in your book, which for me it's absolutely insane. You said you were so close. The top of the plane was already scratching the clouds, and if you would go a little bit lower, you would be feeding the sharks.
I was in an otter, and we got flying down to Quignon. The weather kept getting worse and worse and worse. And the guy that I was flying with, who was sitting in the right seat, he was reading his book, and I kept telling him to call to call Quignon and get the weather. And finally, I couldn't see squat. I mean, and I couldn't descend because there's mountains all around. Those coastal mountains. Quignon was surrounded by them. And God, I was just furious with this guy. And so I called Quignon, and they said it's raining down here, blah blah blah. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? So I said, well, I got to descend. I got to get down. So I'm going to turn east, and I flew out over the water. And there was a hole that I could was just big enough, and I could see the water below me. And I shoved that nose of that damn otter down, and we went down like a stone. And this guy starts yelling and carrying on, and I, pulled out just above the water, but I could see where I was going. And I could have kept flying instruments because I knew how to do that. It wasn't, I mean, I had an instrument rating, and I learned it at
Of
Rutgers.
course, yeah, yeah.
What I was worried about was not that I couldn't fly the airplane in the weather, but I was worried somebody's going to hit me because I didn't have a transponder. And they didn't know where I was. So I mean, me and a C-130 could have said hello. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. So, yeah, I mean, Quinnipiac was a big airfield. They had lots of stuff flying around. So I thought, you smart guy, go out there and get down in the water and come back low level to the beach and low level up the beach if I have to. But I figured I could get to Quang Ngai or to on up to Chu Lai if I needed to. But it turned out the weather got better, and I was able to get all the way back to Da Nang. So the next day I flew back down to Quinyon. That's when I walked into the company commander's office and said, I want to transfer.
Okay. So there was no minimum cloud ceiling. It
Or
didn't really exist. No.
no, the 8 hours between having a drink and getting in the airplane. That one 8 hours between bottle and throttle in Vietnam was 8 feet.
Bottle and throttle.
Yeah. In Vietnam was 8 feet, 8 feet beyond from bottle to throttle.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
good.
And I had a friend of mine said, remember to bring your stuff with you, your little internal checklist of what you were going to carry it. And his mantra, which I've always remembered from that day on, was spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch. If I got those four, I'm good to go.
Oh my God. Uh,
Gotta laugh, Fred. You gotta laugh because nobody else is having any fun either.
uh, but all of all, when you look back at your time, because Charlie Finch told me it was the best time of his life. I had another pilot telling me he was lucky to get home again. How were your emotions when you look back from today's point of view?
From this long range now, look back over 50 years, I think that it was a watershed experience of my life.
Mhm.
It opened doors for me. It gave me an entree into a lifestyle that I could have only dreamt about,
Mhm.
because commercial flying was the most fun you could have and get paid.
Mhm.
And so some of that kind of flying was boring. But when I checked out as a co-pilot in a 737, we flew to every little city in Montana,
Mhm.
seven tiny little towns. We flew little prairie hoppers from Los Angeles to Minneapolis, stopping in places like Sioux Falls and Pierre and
Yeah, but
Rapids.
that's cool.
Oh, and you during the wintertime, you never saw the damn ground. You flew an approach into every one.
Yeah, that's
It was
yeah.
great fun. And so you got that I loved. There were times when uh, there were things that were emotionally upsetting, and you had to figure out a way to let go of them. And sometimes if you let them, they could turn your life upside down. But the one event that could have turned my life upside down that I encountered in Vietnam, I was able to work through, and I worked my way around it, and and got over it. And so um, I and there were people there who helped. They didn't know they were helping, but they did.
Mhm.
And if I ever wanted to ground myself and give myself a reason to stay on this earth, all I had to do was reach down and take hold of my little girl's hands.
Mhm.
And I knew that I'm here because I need to protect them. I brought them into this world, and I'm their
Mhm.
father, and I
Mhm.
can't just abandon them. So I stayed. I lived. I stayed alive.
You sent me a really, really nice picture. Just let me check it. Yeah, here.
That's them.
Yeah,
That's me.
that's them.
That's me,
And
believe it or not.
and please
That,
let me say, look at your face. You're smiling. You're so proud. Oh my God, this picture. These are emotions. Fantastic.
yeah. And this is, I was, my daughters were little, and the girl, the one on my lap is Alana, and that in Gaelic means my darling. And she lives just down the road in Stamford and has a little girl named Lola. And I see Alana all the time. The other little girl is Megan, and that Irish is beautiful. And she lives out in Washington State. And this place that we're in is where I grew up. This is Lloyd Harbor, and this is on Long
Ah,
Island.
okay.
And this is where I grew up. So I mean, but it was those are the things that you wrap your arms around. And both literally and figuratively, you wrap your arms around them, and they keep you grounded. And they say, this is why God put me on this earth for these two kids.
Absolutely. And also here. I think
I,
there's nothing else to say. You loved your job.
that's we were in Dublin, Ireland, and I was leaving Dublin, and this was one of my first trips as an international captain on a 7.6 ER. And I was just beside, I was having so much fun. It's
Oh
great.
my God. I will just try to share some more pics you sent me, and maybe we can talk about them.
Sure.
And the picture where you see the bird dog, yeah, here. So,
This
what
is
do we see here?
this is the CIA compound, and I'm
Mhm.
holding a gong, and you can see the little guy, the Montagnard back here. Montagnards had these gongs in different sizes, and they played them like this. This is Doug Kraut, and Doug was our section leader. He was SPAF 1, I was SPAF 2, and we're at the CIA compound playing volleyball.
Mhm. But you all had those headhunter patches?
We did. That's 219th Aviation Company. Um, I would wear that. Those are Doug's fatigues. I wouldn't wear that on my flight suit. I also wouldn't wear CCC Death's Head Green Beret blood dripping from the fangs thing on my flight
Yeah, you
suit.
sent me. Yeah, yeah.
Not wearing that. So, but I have it, but I just didn't, I wouldn't wear
Okay, but did you fly in those jungle fatigues or did you fly in
I think
Nomex?
I've got a Nomex flight suit on, and that's what we.
Nomex. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't fly in the jungle fatigue.
Okay.
That's me. There's the fourth platoon patch and the headhunter patch, and standing next to the bird dog, and the crew chief named the airplane.
Here, oh, it's what is it? It's
Kathy's Clown.
Kathy's Clown.
That was a song, by the way, by the two brothers, the Everly brothers in the 50s. And anyway, the crew chief, Jim Shelley, I think he had a girlfriend named Kathy, and he named the airplane Kathy.
Yes, sir. I know this song. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Having fun?
Yes, we're washing the Jeep at the Dakla River in Khartoum. And this was the stolen Jeep, the stolen Spaff Jeep. And we, we
It's
used to
black. Yeah, yeah, it's black.
Yep. And we used to go down and just take the Jeep down there when we could and just wash it off. One, because the water was cool, and two, because the Montagnard girls used to wash their clothes topless just down the way.
Okay. Yeah, I would have been going there too.
Yeah, that's on you see the guy with the dog, and then that's my
Yes.
father with his hand on that guy's name. The guy's name with the dog is Joe Byrne. That my dad is the aircraft commander of that B-24. Joe Byrne was the bombardier, and these are
Wow.
the pilot. I don't know what his name was, and I believe this was one of the gunners.
Wow. Okay.
That
Yeah,
was
it's
their
an
number.
insane plane. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's something. But that's himself right there, Francis John O'Doherty.
Wow, nice.
That's
Ah, Spath. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that's Phil Phillips. That's Doug Kraut, who was in the other picture, and that's me. Phil Phillips was the guy who um, uh, was the founder of the International Bird Dog Association.
Ah, really? Ah, okay. I didn't know that.
That's him. That's him. And he lives in Albuquerque. Whenever I had an Albuquerque layover when I was flying for Delta eventually,
Yeah.
Phil and I would get together. I haven't seen Doug since he left Vietnam,
Is he
but
still alive?
mhm, he is. He
Ah, he's
lives
still
in
alive. Oh, okay.
lives in Minnesota with his daughter. His wife passed away about a year and a half ago. And this
Okay.
again, the stolen Jeep with the Sneaky Pete Air Force staff. You can see the fake CCC thingy down there,
Yeah, yeah.
pulling from a Mac V Major. I'm very proud of that. There's the airplane pushed up into a revetment, and we used to push that out in the morning, and or sometimes the crew chiefs would have it pushed out, but a lot of times we did, and we take off before sunrise.
But that's interesting. So you have the white markings on top of the wings, and on the stabilizer of the elevator, you have red markings. That's
Well, we have
interesting.
a red, white, and blue flag. That
And
was yeah.
is do you see it here? You also have red markings on
Or
the
those
wingtips.
there'll be orange out on the wingtips, white back here, and then on the vertical stabilizer, you can see the brigade, no, not the brigade, the battalion, the 223rd Aviation Battalion, their markings. That's us, red, white, and blue.
Okay. It looks like the French flag,
Yeah, not French.
not French.
This is the bunker line. I think this is at CCC in Khartoum.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I used to go out there at night,
Yeah.
and there were Nungs that guarded that were in the bunkers during the night, and I used to go out there and sit on the top of the bunker and look out or look at the stars. And when I walked up to these things, I usually sang a little bit of Susie Q, which was a Creedence Clearwater song, and that way they knew it was me. I
Okay.
didn't
Yeah,
have
yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm on your side.
Yeah. A Vietnamese guy could never sing a song like an American guy.
That's her. That's
She,
that's her.
she's a
And
beauty. I have to say this.
well, I've been in love with her all my life.
Yeah. You're a
And
lucky man.
she's downstairs. She was 17. And the first time I looked at her, I was lost. And she walked up to me and said, "I'm Katie Grace. Who are you?" And I looked at her and I kind of went, "I'm blah, 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 blah." It sounded just like Elmer Fudd.
But really, you're a lucky man. She's a beauty. Absolutely. Well done, sir.
Spectacular. That's my mom.
Wow.
My father's a Doherty. It's Irish. My mother's name is Celestina Paulina de Guira, and she
Wow.
took Italian. And she was just she I miss her every day.
Very elegant girl. It's amazing. Yeah. She has
Very,
style.
very beautiful. She was very beautiful
Wow.
and great. She was just marvelous. This is Buckland. This is the guy that ran the photo shop. This is the guy that came up with the missions. He was the guy that organized and uh, structured this Operation Ford Drum, which is when we went out and did all the bomb damage assessment and all the low-level recon photo missions. He did,
Oh, okay.
and he was the guy that turned out to be the PhD in aviation science.
Okay. Wow.
His, his mother, Michael, grew up in Alaska. He was an orphan. His father was a fisherman who disappeared, and his mom was a, a I'm trying to think of a kind way to say this, but I believe his mom was a hooker. And Michael was born and she left him and he wound up in an orphanage. And I don't think he knows whatever happened to him.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
One of the smartest guys I've ever known and is now not only a PhD in aviation science, but an ordained minister.
Yeah, but look at his eyes. He is super focused.
That's Michael. That's him.
Yeah.
And this is what these guys wore on the bush now. In the bush now, he's got a First Aviation Brigade patch on his sleeve, but he has no other markings at all. So it made sense for
Yeah.
him
Okay. Mhm.
to have this because he was riding in the back seat with us
Mhm.
and his
Wow.
gigantic Pentac.
It's a nice picture. Did you shoot it?
I don't know who took that.
Yeah.
It might have been Phil. I don't remember.
Okay.
That's my mom.
Wow. Wow. Nice. I love those old pictures.
I do too. I do too. And this is I I love this because this is when she was 16 and she was being presented into society. Uh, and this is what happened with young girls that came from a little bit of money. And so she was in, this took place not in New York City, but in Rockefeller Center. And it was a big
Ah, okay.
Irish Catholic thing on Long Island. And there she is with her bouquet. So I have called her the debutante ever since. That's her.
Nice picture. Nice, nice, nice.
Same girl.
Your
That's
mother and your father?
my mother and father. My dad,
Wow.
he just gotten his wings. He was a first lieutenant.
In the old days, the uniforms of the Air Force were white. I didn't know that.
His Army Air Corps formal uniform was white.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Marines wore the same. They also wore, for this kind of an affair, a white uniform.
Ah, okay. That's a nice couple. Wow.
That's him. This is at the Air Force Museum, the annex, the Smithsonian Annex in Chantilly. And Katie and I went up to DC, did a bunch of things there, but one of the things we did do was go out to this so that I could show her this airplane. and because she'd seen pictures, but never seen one in real life. So, with me standing in front of it, you got an idea of how big it really wasn't. And you can see a ramp behind it that goes up. So you could walk all around the upper section of this and be at eye level with the airplane. There's a railing down below where
Nice.
you're standing there looking at it. So she
Yeah.
looks at the thing and she looks back at me and she looks at it again, looks back at me, and she said, "You're fucking nuts."
Yeah, but it's insane, and it makes me also a little bit proud that those planes are still in museums around the world
It's still
and
being shown.
presented to people.
Yeah,
Even here in Austria, we have a bird dog in a museum, you know?
yeah. Well, that's it. That's. I think that was an AMA.
Yeah, obviously. And the MiG-21 below, F4 Phantom, nice.
And it's a Phantom, the Marine Corps, but it was a Phantom, and but that was we. She'd never seen one, and then and very briefly, I'll tell you that last year at this time we were up in on the coast of Rhode Island, so that's
Mhm.
north and east, and on right on the water, and they do a lot of banner towing along the beaches with airplanes, advertising stuff. And so I was sitting on the back porch reading, and I heard this airplane come over, and I immediately looked up because the engine sounded like I knew that engine. And I looked at it, and it was flying away, and I thought, "Oh my God." So I said, "You're going to come back." And as soon as he comes back, I'm going to tell Katie, go out, get a camera, take a picture of it, so that if it doesn't have a nose wheel, that's a bird dog.
Yeah, the sound of the bird dog is unique.
It was
Absolutely.
was a bird dog. So
Yeah.
this guy's towing this thing past where we are. So I'm thinking, well, he's got a banner. He can't be going far. So I looked up in the airport. There was a guy there, Simmons Aviation. I called him on the phone in the nearest airport to where we were. And I said, "You towing banners?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You towing them with a bird dog?" And he said, "I have two of them." And I said, "You're kidding." I said, "Well, I got 1,000 hours in that thing." And he said, "You do it?" "Yeah." I said, "Can I come over and look at it?" So he come over tomorrow morning. I'll be there at 8:30. Bam, I was there. His son, his son is the kid who flies it. He's got one that's in search and rescue colors, all redone, and the other one he just got from Japan. So he rolls the one from Japan out off the box. We push it out, and we're talking about the airplane. And he said, "You want to fly it?"
Oh,
I said, "Oh yeah."
oh yeah.
So he gets in the front and I get in the back, and we pop the pedals up in the back and put the stick in.
Yeah.
And I can hear Katie say to some woman, "He doesn't know how to fly up in the back seat." Well, I do so because I taught for the back seat. When I got back from Rucker, I was an instructor. So we take off in this thing and I flew it for 20 minutes, and I've got the stick, I've got the rudder, and I said, "Just tell me how I'm doing. Don't move. I don't need you to move. I don't need to see anything. I just want to know where I am." And he turns around, he looks at me and goes, "You must have done this a lot." But you're sitting right over the center of gravity. So I mean, you're on the thing, and you got to know by feeling it what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
we were right where we were supposed to
Yeah.
be. That was so cool. When we got out, Fred, and we got out of the airplane, and I stood there and I looked at it, and I started to cry.
Yeah. A lot of emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this at the memorial, at the forward air controller memorial?
This, this is a gathering of guys from the 219th. So these were all headhunters. They could see them on the shirts.
They were
And
all hands. Ah, yes. Now I see it. Yes.
so,
Okay.
so this is the guy with the sunglasses kneeling is Bernie Bernardson. The guy
Mhm.
in the middle, I'll talk about in a minute. His name is John Pappas. The guy with the glasses that you can see through is John Edsel.
Mhm.
Above Bernie Bernardson with the sunglasses is Richie Kane, then Chuck Slimowitz. John Myers is the guy who fired the M79 grenade launcher out the window. The guy in the middle is Arlie Deaton. He was the company commander. Guy standing just behind Arlie is Don Ship. He's the guy that played football for the University of Texas. This is Phil Phillips, my pal, older because he's got gray hair. The guy standing next to him doesn't have any gray hair, and the guy down at the end is George Savani. So the guy in the middle, kneeling, John Pappas, was a West Point cadet, graduated in the class of '66. Pappas and I flew
Wow.
together the last 3 or 4 weeks that I was in country. And
Okay.
John Pappas, to me, was the finest officer I've ever worked with. He was one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. He was an excellent pilot and did he just I just loved being around him. And he passed away in 2013 of pancreatic cancer. He was buried up at West Point. And when I was up there with Kate at his funeral, it was the first time since Vietnam that I had cried about, well, because it was emotional and it brought back a lot of memories. And there were guys there that Richie was there and Chuck Slimowitz was there, and then the guy down the end, George Savani, was there, and me. And I thought that John gave me permission to talk about what I'd done. And up until then, I hadn't talked about it at all. And then Katie, I got my medals out of the drawer when we got home, and Katie asked me what one of them was for. And I explained the Distinguished Flying Cross to her. And she said, you need to do something about all this. And so that's when I started writing. This was a
Wow.
great, this was the first 219th Headhunter reunion.
Wow. And you're still in contact with most of the guys?
I see Richie and Chuck. I just talked to John. Arlie has passed away. Don has passed away. Phil, I
Okay.
just saw this summer. George is still alive. John Pappas has passed, and I don't know where Bernie is, but last I talked to him a couple of years ago, he was still out there.
Okay. Yeah. It's a small family, to be honest, or?
It was an honor to be there with those guys.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. And Arlie Deaton was, there we are, the headhunters. Arlie Deaton was one of the best guys I've ever known in my life. I talked to Arlie once a week on the phone, even when I was in Korea, until
Hmm.
he passed away. And he died in 2011.
Okay. What's the story behind the headhunters? Why headhunters?
I don't know. It was the name they picked for the unit, the 219th.
Okay.
You know, I never quite understood what Charlie Finch's unit, the Cat Killers, meant. I mean, I don't know. It just I showed up and they said, "Okay, you're going to be a headhunter." I said, "All right, I will."
Okay. But I like the patch. It's cool.
Yeah, that's the honor. That was actually that was a lot of fun to fly that airplane.
Mhm.
It really was fun to fly. It was just the mission was so boring, up and down the coast doing nothing, and just wanted to snooze. Then the guy flew me into the weather and tried to kill me, and so we got right down on the water to find our way out. But what a great airplane to fly!
But how was the visibility with this huge radial engine in front of you?
It was fine. It
It
was
was fine, really. Okay.
well, when you taxied with the windows open, and sometimes I stuck my head out the window because you
Ah,
you were kind of up in the air like this when you were
yeah.
taxiing, but
Yeah.
it wasn't too tough, and
Okay.
it was but it unlike a lot like not like the it had a single post between the two pilots with a Y, and then the yokes were on either side of that Y, so it was a dual control
Oh,
cable
okay. Hmm.
thing, and you could crank. There was a footrest, and you could brace that yoke with your knee and crank a whole lot of nose down trim into it without moving your knee, so the airplane wouldn't move. You just crank the load of trim in it. And then I would tell a crew chief in the back before we took off, I said, listen, you got to wear that seatbelt. And he said, okay, okay, okay. But he never put it on. So we'd be up at cruise and I'd crank all that nose down trim and I'd look back and he'd be asleep on a seatbelt on a seat without the seatbelt on. So I'd drop my knee off the yoke and I'd catapult him about 3 seats down. and he got so damn mad and he'd come up and he, Lieutenant, I'll tell you, don't do that. I'm gonna get you, Lieutenant. If you hurt me, I'm gonna get you. Okay. I said, just don't fall asleep. Sure enough, next time asleep down the aisle.
Oh, God.
You great wheel landings in that thing. That's my dad did. Look at
Was
that.
this close to your place?
This was in, this would have been on Long Island where Douglas was making these things.
Wow.
Or I'm sorry, not Douglas. I'll think of it. Who made the B-24? Consolidated. I'm
Consolidated,
sure.
yeah. Yeah, it's incredible how fast the American war machinery started. Insane, yeah.
Unbelievable how that works.
Everyone was working on planes. I got a very close friend, Robert, from Michigan, and close to where he is living, south of the Great Lakes. He said everyone was working for the army, for the air force, producing planes, tanks, trucks, everything. It was insane. Yeah,
It's unbelievable. And I one of the things that really surprised me, and it never occurred to me, and I don't know why, but when I got to the airline as a 27-year-old flight engineer on a 707, all the guys in the cockpit that were flying captain were my dad's age. They were my dad's contemporaries. They all flew in the Army Air Corps during the war, or in the Navy, or in the Marine Corps, and
wow.
it was pretty amazing to,
Yeah.
and not one of them ever talked about it.
Yeah.
I flew for 32 years with Delta Airlines, and I flew with guys who were my age, all Vietnam veterans. And it was only until one of the guys that I worked with produced a series of books with compilations of stories from these veterans did I know who flew and who did what.
Mm.
Nobody ever, nobody. You're in Vietnam, oh, good for you. Off we went. Not
Yeah,
all.
but the mindset today has changed, right? Because there was an interview I watched 6 years ago. There was a couple standing together and talking, and the wives of the two men were close friends. They have been neighbors, and just by talking in the kitchen, they found out that both of them were pilots in Vietnam, and they were neighbors for 20 years and never spoke a word about Vietnam. It's I can't understand this. Yeah.
I commuted to Salt Lake City from Seattle to fly my trips. I was based in Salt Lake, and I had a commuter apartment just south of the city, and there were about 6 of us in there. One of the guys was a guy named Jeff Lugar, and Jeff was junior to me. He was a 727 captain, and I was flying a 67. We went to breakfast one morning, and there was, in this little shopping center, there was a Vietnamese restaurant that served the soup, the pho, and which I loved. So we went there and we had breakfast. And I talking to Jeff, and I said, "Well, where'd you learn how to fly?" And he said, "Well, I flew in the Army." And I said, "Well, who'd you fly for?" And he said, "Well, I flew for the 219th." And I looked at him and I said, "No, you didn't." He said, "Yeah, I flew for the 219th." And I said, "Where were you?" He said, "I was down in Bambi Tuit." "Well, who are you working for?" Well, he was working for CCS, which was the same sort of unit I was working for, but they weren't specifically assigned to it. They just flew missions for them. At any rate, I never knew that he was in the Blue Bird Docs until we sit down having breakfast one morning. You're kidding.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But today, I think people are way more interested in all those stories than it was 20 years ago.
I think they are too, and that's a good thing. But I think they are, and I've had people ask me, and like I said, that's why this is such a wonderful thing we were there were so few of us, and we would have just melted off into obscurity. No one would have known. The special forces guys for whom we worked did not know our names. I
Mm.
was Spaff too. I wasn't Frank Doherty or Fran Doherty or Francis Doherty. I was Spaff too, and that was it. And sometimes it wasn't even two. It was just Spaff, and I could see them now, and they wouldn't recognize me. They wouldn't know who I was.
Mm.
Um, and there were only 12 of us. Um, we were so far removed from the company, all those guys who you saw in front of the memorial. Now I knew them and they knew who I was, but we didn't have much interaction because we were away up in Khartoum and those guys were down in Camp Holloway, and we never went down there. They never saw us. So it's that's why this has been such a special thing.
Mm.
Now they know who he was. Mailman must have just come. Dogs are barking, but they now it's a chance to talk about something that no one would have known about.
Yeah.
Uh, no one would have known that we did what we did, and uh, and lived to talk about it.
But to be honest, would you have done this kind of interview 20 years ago?
No,
I think the same. Yeah.
I think that what happens, Fred, is that as you grow older, some things you forget about, but some things become profoundly clear,
Mhm.
and you reconnect to things that you didn't think you would ever reconnect to. And you see around you more things that are like if I were writing a metaphor for what I'd seen in the past. Or, as an example, my dad and I would go up to Alaska fly fishing for salmon. And I remember he and I standing on a gravel bar watching the fish go up a waterfall. And as they climbed it, it was so amazing to watch this go
Mm.
on, knowing that when they get to the top of the fall, they're going to scoot up this river. They're going to go into their natal stream, spawn, and die. And I'm standing next to my dad, who is in his mid 70s. And this was one of the last times that I knew he was going to come up to Alaska with me.
Mm.
And that time was passing. Days on the calendar was zipping off. And so here is this profound imagery of these fish going up to spawn, and my hero standing next to me,
Yeah.
fading away. And I think that's what makes you want to say, this is what I did. This is me.
Mm.
And it is that's what it is. This is me. I'm I am the sum of my parts. I did do these things. There are
Yeah.
some things I'm sorry for and some things not so much. But all of this is the story, and that's the story that's in the book.
Mm.
And I I'm just grateful that I was able to tell it.
And I'm super thankful that you do this because in this way we preserve your stories for the next generation. And it's so important. Yeah. You know, my son is 8. Maybe in a few years he will start flying the bird dog. And I know for sure one day there comes the question, what was the bird dog built for? And it's the only way to listen to your stories to understand it. Reading the book is one thing, but all those questions and going in details, you only can do it in an interview.
Well, like I said, I am forever grateful to you for
Same.
providing this opportunity to do this. It means so much. You would in the book, the chapter on John Pappas, that was not just about Pappas, that was about love. In
Mm.
the book, that the story about the girl in the orphanage, That wasn't about a child rescued in an orphanage by a Catholic nun. That was about loving someone, learning someone showing me, two women, a nun and my mother, showing me what love really meant. That. And so it's taking the things that touched me and applying them to just the way you live, your values that matter. You know, Charlie Finch would say the same thing. He wouldn't say it the way I said it, but I know he thinks that.
Yeah.
And so does Ray Carl. So does Ray Carl. There's a they are really honorable guys. They're truly profoundly honorable guys. And
Like you.
well, thank you. And you. But I just I guess I just have I have a big mouth. Once I started talking about it, I was so glad that I did. So, and I was very fortunate that a publisher came along and decided that he liked what I did. So I'm happy with that.
Francis, is there a special mission, a special story you want to share with me, with us?
It's actually funny, and I love this story, but there was a radio relay site over in Laos called Leghorn, and our guys were up on the top of it. The North Vietnamese were always trying to get to the top of it, and they never could. And it got resupplied by the Vietnamese Air Force, and these were the King Bees, so they were also the 219th, but it was a helicopter unit, and they flew CH-34s. So I got a call. I was heading over to do something. I was by myself, and I didn't have anybody in the back seat. And I got a call from Leghorn, and he said, "You got to come over here and give us a hand because we're getting mortared, and we can't see it. And it's in broad daylight." So I it's okay. So I get over there, and the North Vietnamese had hauled their mortars up the side of this mountain as far as they could get them. Meanwhile, the King Bees are there, and they're resupplying Leghorn, and the mortaring was interrupting the resupply. But what cracked me up was I was watching this resupply go on, and a helicopter would fly up to the landing zone, the helipad pad sort of thing they had up on the top of this hill, and they would kick off a box, one, and he'd fly away. And then another king bee'd come in, and he'd kick off another box, and then he'd fly away, one box. And it was a daily chain of king bees resupplying, and they'd kick off a box, they'd fly back across the border, go get another box, come back. I thought, well, this is a gigantic waste of time. I found out later why they were doing it. Meanwhile, I'm looking for the mortars. So they've stopped firing, and I think they're repositioning, but I'm still trying to find them. And as I come around this mountain, I see this guy standing on the side of the hill or the mountain. He's got an orange panel. He's jumping up and down, and he's waving at me. And he's obviously not Vietnamese, and he's not U.S. He's a Montagnard. He's got to be, because they were built like little fire hydrants, and they had much darker complexions. Well, they didn't hide from the sun like the Vietnamese did. They tried to stay out of the sun, except for the farmers. The peasants were nutty brown, but the Montagnards got really darker brown. Anyway, he's jumping up and down, waving at me, and he's mouthing something. And if I understood the Montagnard language, the Rade, I probably could have read his lips. But I called up to talk to the guy at Leghorn. I said, "The guy on the side of the hill is waving an orange panel at me, and I think he's one of our guys." And he said, "He is. We got to go get him." So they set a King Bee out, and they throw a rope to the guy, and they pull him on the airplane. Well, what he'd done was he'd fallen asleep at night and rolled off the mountain.
Of course.
Rolled off the mountain. I thought, That's the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And he's bouncing up and down, jumping up and down, flailing this paddle at me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is hysterical. So then some more king bees come back and they still each have a box. And the Vietnamese start to mortar the place again. So now the king bees get pissed off and they throw the boxes off into the and they go down looking for the mortars. They find them. So now everybody's shooting at everybody else, and the Vietnamese run away, and I think they left the mortars there. But at least we got the guy back, and he was very happy, and he gave me a Montagnard bracelet. And I thought, well, this is all's well that ends well. Well, I flew back when I got back to Khartoum, I went and I found Mike Buckland, the guy that we had the picture of. And I said to Bucky, can you explain this to me? What the hell was going on? And he said, I said, do I resupply? And he said, king bees each get $5 a man to resupply for every time they cross the border. So would you get $5 to drop off 30 boxes, or would you get $5 to drop off 30 boxes one at a time?
Okay, I understand. Okay.
I said, well, let me see. If I had
Yeah.
5 every time I crossed the border, I could buy a yacht. So, but I thought that just cracked me up. And it was just one of those bizarre things that, you can't make that kind of thing up. It's just weird. So I just
But
laughed.
it looks like they paid attention in school at math because
They
they
did.
calculated the right way.
Oh no, they do it to the penny, man.
Was there a very emotional thing that you experienced in Vietnam, positive or negative, as you wish? How about the connection to the native people over there, to the Vietnamese? Was there a connection, or were you only living in those camps?
We only lived in the camps. The connection I had, for the most part, was with the Nungs on the bunker line. And because I used to see them almost every night, because I used to go out and sit up on that bunker and stare up at the stars and think about things.
Mhm.
And so it was what was so amazing to me. These guys, I didn't speak Chinese, obviously, and I knew very little Vietnamese. And this guy that I would see every night, he had a gold tooth, and he would always come stick his head out of the bunker when he knew it was me and smile at me. And the moonlight used to glint off his tooth, so I knew it was him.
So,
And well, one night
blinking.
I thought, this guy's been here for a while, and he's probably been here since the French have been here.
Mm.
So when I got to the bunker, he stuck his head out, and I said, "Bonsoir, mon ami," and he said, "Bonsoir, Daiwi." And I
There we
and the first words we exchanged were not in Chinese or in English, but in
go.
French.
French. Yeah.
And so it's that there's a thread, and and there's that connection, that human connection that you make. And when we got shot up so bad, and I was just barely upright, I was so upset and frightened. And I remember he came out and stood with me for a while. I think he could see on the expression on my face how difficult a day it had been. Um, that was a connection. That the And then the only other one that I could possibly make sense of was the night that I went to the aft galley on an airplane going back from LA to Cincinnati, and there was a young lady who was a Vietnamese flight attendant, and I asked her where her family was from, and she told me Da Nang, and her family was killed in Tet. She was the only survivor, and that she had been in this Catholic orphanage, and it turned out to be the one that we had supported. And I still have the Christmas card that Sister Angela sent me. I still have it. And so it was that amazing 25-year or 30-year gap in
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
where something, again, that thread, that human thread, it touches two people. And I mean,
Mm,
she cried, so did I. I mean, it was just amazing. It was
mm,
amazing.
mm,
Those are the things. Those are the connections that they're the. I would never call them terribly sad. I think the better word to describe them would be profound
mm,
and moving, and so and and what even more important, it's like looking at the beauty that you could see in the terrain in Laos before the shooting started. That touch with humanity, with your humanity, that thing that makes you a caring human being. That's what happens with the Nung. That's what happens with the young lady in the galley in the airplane. That thing, that connection. That is you at your most human, at your most vulnerable, and at your most caring, I think.
mm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Did you have any kind of feelings about when the war ended, when the American troops left, and I think the fight between North and South continued for another 2 years? And how was it to see in television that
thinking I can't I don't even I try not even to visualize that helicopter on that roof.
yes,
I,
this
I don't
scene, everyone knows it, yeah.
I don't even want to think it because how do you justify how do you account for 58,000 lives given? How do you account for millions of Vietnamese
Yeah.
buried in mass graves in the beaches by Phu up in Icor during Tet in '68? How do you do that? It's just, and I I think about guys that I know that were killed there, um, that we weren't able to recover their bodies. I think about uh, one instance in particular where I found a guy that was out screwing around instead of flying his mission. And the talk that we had, I wouldn't report him. I just couldn't do that. But I said, how do you justify the last guy to die here?
Mm,
And think about that. And you're because maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I said, it's your conscience. It's on you. You got to figure it out. They're not going to. I'm just saying, what's the right thing to do? And I don't know, but I think about the days that I think about, Fred. I think about the 1st and 2nd of April, Dak Siang, and the day that Armstrong got killed. I think about losing Fritz Krupp over the Playtrap Valley, and I think about John and I involved in a monster firefight in the Playtrap. And if I remember anything, the sound of around piercing the skin of the bird dog and the way the bird dog shuddered. I know the sound that around made when it went by my window.
mm,
I always wondered why I had internalized the rate of fire of a 12.7 Chinese machine gun. Why would I know that? It's that sort of thing that you take with you and it makes you wonder. Those are the things that come back to you and haunt you. There was a joy in seeing that bird dog fly over the house in Weekapaug, and there was an
mm,
even greater joy in getting to fly it. But
mm,
it's all those connections that you make, and they're all a little different, and they all produce different feelings.
mm,
And and some of them are very difficult to explain, and
mm,
and some of them you don't know why they come back. I will say that I'm glad I don't dream anymore.
mm.
Or if I do, it's a very occasional dream. but not like it used to be.
For me, uh, all those things in Laos. That's why I was super interested in talking to you, because I didn't know that in Laos more pounds of bombs have been dropped than in the whole Second World War over Germany and Japan. That's incredible. And did you also see those bomb runs of the B-52 bombers?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's what the bomb damage assessment was. And so we would get this was unbelievable. We would get to that area that they were going to hit just before they started. And we'd watch them come down and blam, 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 blam. And then when the last one came down, and you kind of hoped that it was the last one, and you went in low level. Now, what was so amazing was that squirming up out of the ground was people like ants. How the hell they lived through that crap, I will never know. But by God, some of them did. And the place that you were extraordinarily careful about was the edge of where they had bombed. Because if I were the guy in the ground, I'd be moving there. Pete Johnson who was there before me at CCC, was involved in one of those things, and he either he misread where the coordinates of the strike were or something, but he wound up trying to fly away from. I mean, the bombs were coming right behind him, and he's in this bird dog trying
Oh,
to. Jesus Christ! You know what? He obviously he managed to fly out of that area where they were working and get off to the edge. But I thought, holy Christ! I was always worried about doing something like that. You know, something got all crossed up. But fortunately, it never happened. And the terrain when they got done was was like a moonscape.
yeah.
I mean, it was god damn. How anybody lived through that, I will never know. But they did.
So did they have bunkers along the Ho Chi
Must
Minh
have,
Trail?
well, they must have, but they were
Okay.
way deep, and and so that's what I'm assuming that's what it was. But I was never there on the ground to see, so I just know that there were people coming up out of the ground after that thing was over. And we did it all the time. We did those often. It
Well,
was you could smell the explosives, and sometimes it sting your eyes, and really pretty amazing. I and it was obviously I truly hated that mission more than anything else,
hmm.
because we always got when they came up, they were like a nest of angry bees when they came out of the ground. I mean, holy shit, they were shooting at anything, and
Of course, yeah.
it happened to be me.
The B-52s were gone. It's only you.
Yeah, I can't see them, but I can see you, pal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. Do you remember your last mission?
Yes, I do. And Pappas, we flew a mission where Pappas, after it was over, or we got involved in this thing where we had a whole bunch of North Vietnamese in the open. And so we had gunships and we had A1Es, and I was running the A1Es. John was using the gunships as a blocking force. And all of a sudden, this UE command ship shows up, and there's a lieutenant colonel in it. And so he's ginning around down where we are, and he's asking questions. And what's the body count? Yaka, yaka, baga, baga. And John, and he almost ran into John. And so John starts screaming at him, and he calls him a motherfucker. And I thought, oh my God, you stupid motherfucker. And I thought, oh, yeah. So So John goes and starts talking to this guy and tell him to get the hell out of here. Oh, yak, yak, yak. Meanwhile, I'm still running the A1Es, and we get back to the minute we run out of gas. The Air Force shows up. They take over. We're just about out of gas. We could have gone to Dock Toe, which is where this colonel went. So hell no, we're not going to Dock Toe. We went all the way back to Khartoum. We're not no chance that we want to see this guy. So we get back to Khartoum and park the airplanes, and rather go to Holloway. I'm sorry, go and park the airplanes. And I was out of Khartoum at this point. I was now down in company and getting ready to go home. And at any rate, we park the airplanes and we go back to the little Headhunter bar and have a couple of beers. And John finally says, "You really smell bad." And I said, "Well, you smell worse, and you need to brush your teeth." And he said, "Well, you need to brush your teeth." So so we're going to leave and leave the bar. And here comes Deaton, the company commander, and Ship's behind Deaton, and Deaton points at John and me, and he said, "Just the two jackasses I want to see. Who called Colonel so-and-so a stupid motherfucker?" And I looked at Pappas, and he looked at me, and I pointed at Pappas, and Pappas pointed at me, and we started laughing. Well, I'm looking at Ship now, and I can see Ship is laughing. So this is a big act, and we're not in trouble. And in fact, we got written up for Silver Stars, which we never got, which was a big deal medal. Anyway, we never got them. Pappas that night says, "I'm done. I don't have to do anything anymore." And I looked at him and I said, "What do you mean I'm done?" He said, "No, you're not blind anymore. You're going home in a week." He said, "You go to the pool and go lay in the sun." I said, "What pool?" He said, "There's a swimming pool right behind the officers club. You go there." I said, "I didn't know they had a swimming pool here." So the next day I get up and there's no John, and he doesn't come and get me. So I go to the swimming pool. And I'm laying out there, and next thing you know, there's sweat dripping on me, and it's Pappas. And he said, "You got to get up and get dressed. We got to go. We got troops in contact. You got to come help me, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Last trip." I said, "Get your ass and get down." So down we run. Now this is my last trip. We're right back in the same place. Special Forces camp has been turned over to the Vietnamese, and that's at Poly Clang. And we're working this thing, and guys are shooting and hollering and all this other stuff. And we finished this thing, and I go back, and he said, "Now you're really done." And I didn't believe it. So now I'm laying by the pool, and he doesn't come. And now I'm lost, and I don't know what to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I didn't know what to do for the next couple of days. And that was my last mission. We flew with Polly Klang, and we worked at Special Forces camp, and we all had a couple of bullet holes in the airplane to show for it. But then I went home, and Deaton and I flew to Quinyon, and I saluted Arlie, and he saluted me back, and then I hugged him, and I got in this Jeep, and it took me across the way to the C-130. It was going to take me to Tonsanut, and I looked back at Arlie, Fred, but I couldn't see him because I was crying too hard,
Hmm.
trying to leave. And you 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 ask yourself, how do you get back to normal? How do I
Hmm.
find the boy that I once was before I got here? What kind of shape is he in? And so it's that. There you go. That was the real last mission. And then I went home.
And it was clear that you will go back to Fort Rucker and become an instructor?
Yeah. Because the major that was out processing me asked me, he said, "Where do you want to go, Captain?" And I said, "I want to go to the 6th Army Flight Detachment of the Presidio of San Francisco." And but I went to USF for college, and I loved the city, so that's where I wanted to go. And he looked at me, he laughed, and he said, "Captains don't go to the Presidio." That's it's it. And last I looked, you're a captain. So where do you really want to go? And I said, "Well, if I can't go to the Presidio, let's go back to Fort Rucker. But I'm a flight instructor in the Bird Dog, don't screw me and say I'm an admin officer or I'm a general's aide or some crap like that. Because if you do, I'm turning around, coming right back and finding you. And so he said, no, no. He said, you'll go to fixed wing training as a flight instructor. So that's what I
So you
did.
had the choice to
Yeah,
choose?
I did. That's where he sent me. Well, I didn't
Wow.
really have a choice. He wasn't sending me back to the Presidio. That was my choice. So
Okay.
when I went back there, that's where I met Charlie Finch.
Okay.
So, but
And
that
how
was
long have you been at Fort Rucker?
I was Rucker from September of 1970 until July the 7th of 1972. While I was back there, I got my the hell did I got? I got my commercial license, a real commercial license, and a multi-engine rating, and made it was officially not now a tactical one, but an official one, an instrument ticket. And I got a master's in psychology from an extension course, which didn't help me one bit, either personally or professionally. But it looked good on my resume. That's
Yeah, of course.
the best I could do. And and then at night, after we finished instructing, when I wasn't going to class, we would get together. There were four of us. We'd sign out a bound, and we'd go fly for a couple of hours. And we took turns flying. Uh, One night we would be every fourth time we fly the airplane, but we logged all the time. Absolutely logged it. I'm sitting here, I'm logging a star. So that helped my, because when they looked at my application when I first went to go to Western, and the guy looked at it, he goes, "You don't have any multi-engine time?" I said, "Only what I got in flight school." He said, "You don't have any jet time?" And I said, "No, just bird dog. That was it. All I did." He said, "What did you do in Vietnam?" And I said, "I can't tell you."
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
He said, did you actually fly in Vietnam?" And I said, "Not exactly, but don't quote me." And so
Okay. Okay.
it, you got to laugh at some of the stuff. You gotta have a little fun with it.
And did you have any experience with protesters?
Not really, no.
Not
I
really. Okay.
no.
This is also interesting. Some have absolutely no experience, bad experience. Uh,
When I left Rucker, I drove to California. I didn't get off an airplane at Travis and have a bunch of protesters outside at the gate yelling and screaming. My friend, my stickmate in training, Bruce Coey, he went home when he got back in 60 and 70 in 69. He got back to, and he was from the Bay Area. So he was in Berkeley, and he went home and he got yelled at and hollered at and whatnot. In fact, they told him not to wear his uniform.
mm.
I didn't have a problem.
For me, this is something that I really don't understand, and I think I will never understand it. Uh, when those guys are spitting at soldiers, hey, that's the wrong address. It's a political decision. So you did your job, yeah, and yeah,
Sometimes,
I will
you know,
never understand this. Yeah.
I thought, and this is just me, but I thought that a lot of that was very self-serving, and
Mm.
it was if you did that, if you protested, if you yelled loud enough, eventually
Mm.
that war was going to stop, and you weren't going to have to go. That
Ah,
was and
yeah, okay.
so and then the one that was for me was even more infuriating was were the women on occasion who said things, and I had this happen with my daughter when she was in high school, and they had no skin in that game. In other words, they had nothing to lose. They didn't have a draft card. They weren't going to have to go to boot camp. They just, they wasn't girls didn't go into the army to fight. They could go as nurses.
Mm.
They could go as wax and as admin, but not as combat soldiers. So somebody standing there throwing eggs at me or fruit at me or calling me names, um, they had nothing to lose.
Mm.
And that was the tough one.
Interesting point of view, but it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Think about it. They could say whatever they wanted. There were no consequences
Mm. Mm.
to those actions. And so it was there was a get out of jail free card for them.
Mm. Mm. Uh, one of my final questions will be, you were an airline captain, and did you still continue to fly small planes like Cessna, Beechcraft, Piper?
Yep. I stuck I did fly one little airplane. It was a Stearman, and it was a
Mhm.
two-seater biplane, and I wanted to fly it. Guy had one, invited me to come fly it. It was marvelous. But in LA, it was congested airspace, which is where I was based originally. A lot of guys who owned airplanes were doctors and dentists. Had
Okay.
no idea what the hell they were doing. And I thought, I don't want to be up there with them. And so I'm very content to fly this airplane. And when I got to fly a 737 as a first officer, it was great fun. And
Okay.
so no, I didn't.
But
What I did do was I almost always on every approach and on every climb out turn the autopilot. I did not use an autopilot. I
okay.
only engaged the autopilot to cruise.
Okay. Yeah. So you still wanted to be a pilot and not a system administrator.
If I want to, if I want to play an arcade game, a video game, I'll go get a
Yeah.
computer, go
Yeah.
to an arcade. I ain't interested in that. I like driving the jet. It's fun.
Okay. Okay. And there were never any kind of intentions to buy a bird dog?
Well, there always are intentions to buy a bird dog,
Because
and we're very
many
fortunate.
years ago, they were quite cheap over there, yeah?
That's right. That's right. Many years ago, they were quite cheap,
Yeah.
and we were taking pay cuts at Western Airlines and working extra time. And then two kids came along with college tuitions, and they wanted dresses, and they wanted and we bought a very wonderful jazz guitar with an amp. Somebody plays very well, and someone else got a cello. You don't ever want to buy a cello,
Yeah.
ever. you know, because that cello is as much as a BMW convertible with leather at a
Yeah,
big,
it's insane. Yeah, incredible. I know.
you
I
can't
know.
know. And sometimes that cello wants to go to Italy with a, which it did, and they can't go in the pit. They got to go in the seat next to the kid that's going to Italy with it. So, get ready for all that. It's coming. You wait and see. And if you have daughters, give her back. It's good. I'm just kidding. It's fun. It's fun. But things get in the way. You were lucky.
But I understand you kind of, because saying that you almost never use the autopilot in takeoff and landing. Yes, now I understand you, because you still wanted to have the feeling that you are the pilot.
You can't give that up. That's not allowed. That's not allowed. And it's so prevalent now where you get into a cockpit and you watch these guys try to figure everything out by programming a computer. And I watched it as an instructor, a captain and a first officer arguing about why the airplane wasn't going where it was supposed to go.
Yeah.
No one stopped the airplane from going where it wasn't supposed to go. They argued about why it was doing it.
Yeah.
No one thinks Oh, fly the jet.
Yeah.
Fly the jet. One of the few words I learned in Korean. Bihan. Fly the jet.
Jet. Okay.
Fly the jet.
We made. Where's this picture? Just let me see. Yeah, 1, 2. That's me and my dad.
Oh,
My dad with the original olive green army bird dog,
yeah.
and me flying above information.
Great.
We are the only two bird dogs in Austria, and a long time. My dad and I, we have been the only father-son formation who flies a bird dog around the world.
Fantastic.
This was
Fantastic.
pretty cool.
That's a
And
great, great photographs.
And here we did a slip. I slipped to the right, he slipped to the left side, and this is how this picture was made. It looks awesome, huh?
That's awesome picture. And it's a great, those are great paint jobs on those airplanes. They look
and the details, they are really sharp, yeah.
So yeah, those are great paint jobs.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Francis. Hey, thank you very much for doing this with me. It was a big honor.
I loved it. I loved it, and I thank you so much for having me. I'm the honor is all mine, Fred. Truly, all mine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you ever come to Austria, give me a call.
We're coming.
And be my backseater, yeah?
You just got to let me fly a little bit.
Of course I will. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, I really enjoyed this interview. I had big fun with Francis. What a nice guy. Big adventure. And the stories he told us, I really enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe my channel. It's a lot of work to do these interviews, and I really enjoy it, and I like to read your comments about it. Thanks, and see ya.